Mom mortgaged our home for my sister's dream wedding. When I filed the papers, they realized I was done sacrificing for their dreams. I never imagined I would be posting my own, yet here we are. This occurred nearly a year ago, and I am finally ready to reveal the entire disaster. My name is Rachel. I'm 26 and formerly lived with my mother Catherine, 50, and my younger sister Sophia, 21. Dad died when I was 18. Since then, it's just the three of us at our family home in suburban Cleveland. Well, it was meant to be our house. Let me give you an idea of how things operated in the Martinez household. Sophia was the golden kid since birth. Mom was always making excuses. She is younger. She is more sensitive. She needs additional help. Meanwhile, I was expected to be the responsible one. The one who didn't need anything. The one who should be content with what she had, while Sophia wanted to quit her part-time job at the local coffee shop because her manager was cruel to her. Mom backed her decision by increasing her allowance. When I asked if I could use some of my college fund to study abroad junior year, money doesn't grow on trees, Rachel. Be practical. Sophia received a brand new Honda Civic for her 18th birthday. I purchased a used bike and was encouraged to be grateful for any form of mobility. Sophia's pals were always welcome to stay overnight, order pizza, and make noise until 2 a.m. When my college friends arrived, my mother would complain about the commotion and urge them to leave by 10 p.m. But the real stinger was that when Dad died, he bequeathed the house to all three of us equally. Mom received the larger share as his husband, but Sophia and I both inherited portions. We all owned it together, albeit Mom handled all of the household finances and choices. Mom always promised that when she died, Sophia and I would share the inheritance evenly. It's only fair, she'd explain. This house belongs to all of us. I finished from college with a marketing degree and began working as a marketing assistant at a mid-size firm downtown. I was making $48,000 per year, which wasn't much, but it was enough to cover household expenses and start saving. I offered to pay the rent several times, but Mom always refused. This is your home, honey. Family doesn't pay rent. Sophia, on the other hand, dropped out of community college after just one semester, claiming it was not for her. She'd had roughly 8 different jobs in 2 years, generally resigning after a month or two due to conflict with co-workers or customers. Mom never pressed her to contribute monetarily. She's figuring herself out, was the common theme. The circumstance that eventually broke me began in February. Sophia had been dating this man named Ethan for almost 6 months. He was fine, I suppose, but Sophia was utterly fixated on him. She talked about him all the time, blogged about their connection on social media every day, and essentially made him her entire personality. Sophia came into the living room one day in early March, literally vibrating with enthusiasm as Mom and I were watching TV. "Ethan proposed," she exclaimed, waving out a little diamond ring. "We're engaged." I admit, my immediate thought was that they were far too young and hadn't been together long enough to make such a commitment. But I congratulated her and inquired about their plans. That's when things became interesting. "We want to have a destination wedding," Sophia said. "Somewhere tropical and beautiful. Ethan has been looking at resorts in the Bahamas." Mom instantly began gushing about how romantic and great that sounded. I asked a practical inquiry. "How are you planning to pay for that? Those kinds of weddings are expensive." Sophia's face sank slightly. "Well, we were hoping. I mean, since Dad always said he wanted to walk me down the aisle someday." She looked at Mom with puppy dog eyes. Mom's expression relaxed entirely. "Of course, sweetheart. We'll figure something out. This is your special day." Sophia compulsively investigated venues over the next few weeks. She chose this wonderful resort in Nassau, which cost $18,000 for the wedding package alone, excluding flights, lodging, and any additional expenses. We were looking at about $32,000 for a family of 3, including Ethan's parents. I tried to be supportive. I actually did. But when Sophia mentioned flying first class and upgrading to Ocean View suites, I had to say something. "Jess, maybe we should look at some more budget-friendly options. There are beautiful places that don't cost quite so much." She looked at me as if I'd suggested getting married at a gas station. "Rachel, this is my dream wedding. I've been planning this my whole life. You've been engaged for 3 weeks. You're just jealous because no one wants to marry you." It hurt, but I ignored it. Sophia has always been dramatic. When my mother called a family meeting in late March, the underlying issue became evident. She'd been calculating figures, she explained, and the wedding would necessitate some imaginative funding. They had fixed the date for September 15th, giving us 6 months to plan and save. I've been thinking about the house, she explained thoughtfully. You know, property values have gone up a lot in the past few years. If we took out a home equity loan, we could easily cover Sophia's wedding costs. I stared at her. You want to mortgage the house for a wedding? It's not just any wedding, Rachel. It's Sophia's dream wedding, and it's not like we'd be spending the money frivolously. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event. Mom, what if something happens to your income? What if you can't make the payments? We could lose the house. Don't be so negative. My job is stable, and you're contributing now too. We can handle the monthly payments. I tried to explain that taking on that much debt for a party seemed extremely hazardous, especially since Sophia and Ethan had no money and irregular jobs. Mom accused me of being unsupportive and envious, but I promised to think about it. What options did I have? It was a 2-on-1 situation, and Mom handled the household finances. Several weeks later, in April, Mom approached me again. She had gone to the bank and been pre-approved for a $38,000 home equity loan. The monthly payments would be approximately $420, which she was certain we could afford with her earnings and my contribution to household expenditures. There's just one small thing, she explained. Since you and Sophia are both on the deed as co-owners, the bank needs all 3 of us to sign the loan documents. My stomach sank. Mom, I really don't feel comfortable with this. Rachel, please. This is for your sister's happiness. Don't you want Sophia to have the wedding she's always dreamed of? I requested for more time to ponder, but the pressure was relentless. Sophia would make remarks about how I was the only thing standing between her and her ideal day. Mom would sigh deeply anytime wedding preparations came up, expressing Sophia's disappointment that we couldn't move further. Finally, in early May, I caved. I signed the loan forms, and Mom immediately began transferring funds to meet Sophia's wedding expenditures. The date was scheduled for September 15th, only 4 months away. Almost quickly, spending grew out of control. Sophia thought she needed a new clothing for her trip. She scheduled spa treatments and trips that were not part of the original plan. She insisted on holding the rehearsal dinner at the resort's most costly restaurant. When I mentioned the rising expenditures, Mom advised me not to worry about it. We'll figure it out. This is Sophia's time. Sophia announced 2 weeks before the wedding that she'd invited 6 more pals to join the festivities. The more the merrier, she exclaimed joyfully. I did the math. With the extra visitors, improved rooms, and all the add-ons Sophia kept wanting, we were looking at about $55,000 in total expenses, which our $38,000 loan wouldn't cover. How are we going to pay for the rest? I asked my mother. I've been thinking about that, she responded. I could get some cash advances on my credit cards to make up the gap. Perhaps $9,000 or so. I felt nauseous. Mom, that is insane. The interest rates for cash advances are around 25%. We'll never be able to repay that amount. Rachel, sometimes you have to take risks for the people you care about. Sophia deserves it. I tried to reason with them again, suggesting that they cut back on some of the frills. Perhaps decreasing the guest list or finding methods to minimize costs without jeopardizing Sophia's vision. They both acted as if I was attempting to spoil Sophia's happiness out of spite. You'll understand when you're older, Mom replied dismissively. Right now, you're concerned with money, but family is what really matters. Someday, you'll want your family to make sacrifices for your happiness too. That remark stuck with me for days. You'll understand when you're older. I was 26 years old, a college graduate, working and contributing to the household. But obviously, I was too young and immature to form an informed view about incurring severe debt for a party. The final straw occurred 1 week before the wedding. When I got home from work, I found Sophia and Mom in the living room, surrounded by shopping bags. Sophia was showing off a fancy dress she had purchased for the rehearsal dinner. It was $900, but it's Valentino, she said. I'll probably never own anything this nice again. It got stolen. Sophia, we're already $18,000 over budget for this wedding. Why are you still spending money we don't have? God, Rachel, you're so obsessed with money. It's just a dress. It's a $900 dress that we're paying for with credit card debt. Sophia's voice became frigid. This is my wedding. If you don't want to be supportive, maybe you shouldn't come. I stared at my mother, hoping for her to say something, anything, to admit how ridiculous this had become. Instead of sighing, she said, Rachel, I know you're stressed about the finances, but can't you just be happy for your sister? This is the most important day of her life. That night, I was unable to sleep. I continued thinking about what Mom said. You'll understand when you're older. Her tone was condescending, and she dismissed my very sensible concerns, assuming that I was simply too young to appreciate the value of family. I remembered my father, who had always treated me as an intelligent individual whose ideas mattered. He would never have taken out a mortgage to pay for our wedding. He certainly would not have ignored my worries with arrogant remarks about age and maturity. And I thought about the house. Dad had given it to all three of us equally. Mom always said it will be mine and Sophia's someday, that it was our security and inheritance. She was willing to risk losing it for a party. That's when I made a decision. The following morning, I called in ill from work and spent the day researching real estate lawyers and property law. What I discovered was quite intriguing. Sophia and I were both listed on the deed as equal co-owners with Mom, so any of us might ask the court for a division sale. Essentially, if co-owners of a property cannot agree on how to administer it, the court may order that it be sold and the proceeds distributed based on ownership percentages. It was a nuclear option, and it would most likely kill my connection with my family. But I was facing years of debt payments on debts I didn't want. Sophia might also have a flawless princess moment. I spent the weekend meeting with lawyers. The process would take several months, but it was certainly conceivable. Recent comparable sales indicated that the house was worth around $350,000. There was still around $190,000 remaining on the old mortgage, plus the new $38,000 home equity loan. After paying the legal bills, we'd have about $105,000 remaining to split three ways. My share would be about $33,000. Not a large sum, but enough for a respectable flat deposit and some breathing room. But I wasn't quite prepared to go nuclear. I decided to have one final talk with Mom. Monday evening, I requested her to meet with me privately. I expressed my concerns about the debt we were incurring, the risk to our property, and the pattern of financial recklessness that this wedding represented. Mom, I love Sophia and I want her to be happy, but we're mortgaging our future for one day. What happens if you lose your job? What happens if the house needs major repairs? We'll have no equity left and $55,000 in high-interest debt. Mom listened, but I could tell from her eyes that she had already made up her mind. Rachel, I understand your concern, but there are moments in life when you must take risks for the people you care about. Sophia has had difficulty finding her way, and this wedding marks a new beginning for her. I'm not going to let financial concerns deprive her of this moment. What about my future? How about my security? You are young, smart, and capable. You will figure things out. Sophia needs additional help right now. There it was. The same old dynamic that had defined our family since Dad's death. Sophia's wants were always prioritized. My issues were always secondary. What if I stated I wanted to sell my house? I asked gently. Mom's face turned white. What? What if I told you I don't want to be a part of this anymore? What if I decided to pay out my stake and start over elsewhere? Rachel, you cannot be serious. This is our family's home. Your father wanted us to remain together. Dad urged us to take care of one another. He didn't want us to go bankrupt hosting parties. We debated for another hour, but it was evident that Mom wasn't going to budge. Sophia's wedding was going to happen regardless of the financial ramifications, and I was expected to go along with it since family loyalty came first. That night, I called the lawyer I had previously talked with and informed him I intended to proceed with a partition case. He explained that I would need to have the other parties professionally served with legal papers, as leaving paperwork on a kitchen table would not be legally sufficient. The next morning, Tuesday, August 5th, exactly 6 weeks before Sophia's wedding, I submitted the formal paperwork to compel the sale of our family home. I arranged for a process server to deliver the papers to Mom and Sophia the following Monday, August 12th, giving them a full month before the wedding to process the situation. I didn't tell Mom and Sophia about the lawsuit right away because they were leaving for the Bahamas on Thursday, September 12th, and I wanted to give myself enough time to figure out my next steps before the inevitable explosion. The process server would deliver the documents on Monday, August 12th, giving them a full month to resolve the legal issues before their wedding. On Wednesday evening, September 11th, I packed 2 suitcases with my most crucial items and loaded them into my car. I selected a short-term rental property across town, paid a deposit, and scheduled a week of vacation from work to begin immediately. Thursday morning, I waited until Mom and Sophia went for the airport. Sophia was literally bouncing with excitement, chatting non-stop about how great everything would be. Mom was anxious about all the last-minute preparations, but glad to see Sophia so joyful, and they hardly acknowledged my departure. I was sticking behind to hold down the fort and would see them when they returned on Monday. After their Uber left, I walked through the house one more time, remembering Dad teaching me to ride a bike in the driveway, helping me with homework at the kitchen table, and reading bedtime stories in my childhood bedroom. I was going to miss this place, but it hadn't felt like home in a long time. I put a sealed envelope on the kitchen table with Mom's name on it, including a copy of the partition court paperwork and a brief note. Mom, I tried to express my concerns, but you made it plain that Sophia's desires are more important than our family's financial security. Because you are willing to risk the house for her wedding, I have chosen to collect my part now, rather than waiting for the inevitable foreclosure. You should have received the official court documents last month. My attorney's contact information is supplied. I'll be staying somewhere else while this gets resolved. I hope Sophia's wedding fulfills all of her expectations. Rachel. I also placed my house key on the table next to the envelope, and I drove to my new apartment to wait. They returned Monday evening, September 16th, around 8 p.m. I was watching Netflix when my phone started blowing up, and the first call came from Sophia at 8:47 p.m., which I let go to voicemail. The second call came from Mom at 9:15 p.m., which also went to voicemail. She said she was disappointed beyond words, and couldn't understand how I could be so cruel and selfish, and she demanded that I call her back right away to explain myself. Over the following 3 hours, I received 47 phone calls, 32 text messages, and God knows how many voicemails. Mom and Sophia alternated between wrath, pleading, and guilt-tripping. Here are some highlights from Sophia. I can't believe you'd do this to me at the best period of my life. Mom is crying, and it is entirely your fault. From Mom. Your father would be ashamed of you. How could you so viciously assault your own family members? From Sophia again. Chase's parents think we're white trash now because of the case. You have humiliated me. From Mom. If you believe you can coerce us into giving you money, you are mistaken. We will fight this. I didn't answer to any of them. What was the point? For months I tried to have normal conversations, but they always dismissed me. On Tuesday morning, I received a call from my lawyer, Tom Bennett. Mom had called his office and left some extremely furious messages. She seems to think you can just drop the lawsuit if you want to, he said. I explained that it does not operate that way once the paperwork is filed, but she did not appear to comprehend. How long will it take? I asked. About 4 to 6 months, providing they do not contest it. If they fight, it might last longer. What are the possibilities that they will fight it? Honestly, it's low. The law is fairly clear regarding partition rights. Fighting it would only cost them legal fees, which they evidently cannot afford. Sophia stopped by my workplace that afternoon. Security called to inform me that I had a visitor who was causing a commotion in the lobby. I hurried downstairs to find Sophia crying and making a fuss in front of the registration counter. Rachel, please, she begged when she spotted me. You must stop this. Mom can't sleep, she's discussing taking out additional debts to fight the lawsuit. I walked her outside so we could talk privately. Jess, I attempted to talk about this with you guys for months. You would not listen. But I've just got married. This was meant to be the best period of my life. But now everything is wrecked. How was your wedding? The inquiry appeared to take her off guard. It was beautiful. Perfect. Actually, the resort was fantastic, and the event was like a fairy tale. I'm happy. I actually am. I wanted you to have a lovely wedding. So why are you doing this? I tried again to explain the debt, the financial risk, and the pattern of favoritism that had brought us to this position. Sophia listened, but I could tell she wasn't paying attention. I don't understand why you're so obsessed with money, she finally remarked. It's only money. We are family. To Sophia, money was just something that appeared when she needed it, and the consequences of overspending were someone else's problem. I, on the other hand, saw money as a symbol of security, independence, and the ability to make decisions about my own life. I'm not obsessed with money, I informed her. I just don't want to spend the next 10 years paying off debt for your party. This wasn't simply a party. It was my wedding. A wedding lasts one day. The debt would have lasted a decade. She went without saying goodbye, and the next few weeks were difficult as Mom and Sophia tried various strategies to persuade me to withdraw the lawsuit. Mom promised to refinance the house and remove my name from all loans if I stopped the legal action. Sophia wrote me a lengthy letter about family devotion and forgiveness, and when that didn't work, they attempted to turn others against me. Mom called my aunts and uncles to inform them that I was tearing the family apart over money. Sophia made cryptic social media statements about being betrayed by someone she trusted, and several of our extended family came out to me, largely to express their concern about what was going on. When I described the issue, the majority of them were really very supportive. Uncle David, my father's brother, stated he thought it was prudent of me to preserve my financial future. "Your dad always worried about your mom's spending," he told me over coffee one afternoon. He used to say Catherine was too generous for her own good, especially when it came to Sophia. That surprised me, but it made sense in retrospect. Mom and Sophia hired a lawyer to represent them, but as Tom anticipated, there was little they could do to halt the proceedings. The court ordered an appraisal of the property and set a hearing to approve the sale. During this time, I had to cope with unexpected consequences. Word of the case had traveled around our neighborhood, and I began receiving sympathetic but intrusive questions from neighbors. When I returned to gather more of my stuff, Mrs. Patterson from next door approached me one afternoon, as I was loading boxes into my car. "Rachel, honey, I heard about what's happening with the house," she continued, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "I just want you to know that your father would be proud of you for standing up for yourself." That comment hurt me more than I anticipated. I'd been questioning myself constantly, wondering if Dad would truly approve of me forcing the sale of our family home. But Mrs. Patterson had known our family for 15 years, and she'd seen Sophia grow up with everything handed to her while I worked hard for every opportunity. "Your mother means well," she added, "but that girl of hers has been spoilt rotten since your father's death. Someone had to put an end to it eventually." At work, I pushed myself into my projects with renewed zeal. Having my own house and knowing I was working toward true financial independence gave me energy I hadn't felt in years. My employer, Clara, observed the shift and approached me during our monthly one-on-one meeting. "I don't know what's going on in your personal life, but whatever it is seems to be agreeing with you," she remarked. "Your work has been fantastic during the last few months. I've been considering promoting you to Senior Marketing Coordinator." The promotion included a $9,000 salary rise, which felt like the world confirming me I had made the right decision. I was finally getting acknowledged for my contributions, rather than being regarded as an ATM for other people's ambitions. Meanwhile, the tension at home was intensifying in ways I learned about through family gossip. My cousin Maria called me in early August to tell me what she'd heard from her mother, who'd spoken with Mom. Sophia has apparently been having panic attacks about the house situation, and Maria informed me that she believes everyone in town is talking about their financial problems, and she is too humiliated to leave the house. I felt a feeling of sympathy, but then Maria went on. "The strange thing is, she's still posting on Instagram about how great her wedding was and showing off all the nice stuff she got for the honeymoon. Like, girl, maybe don't flaunt those fancy handbags if you're trying to gain pity for your financial issues." Sophia wanted to be viewed as both the victim of my unfair lawsuit and the attractive newlywed living her best life. The true eye-opener occurred when I ran into Ethan's mother, Barbara, at the grocery store in mid-August. I had only seen her a few times before the wedding, but she recognized me and approached with caution. "Rachel, I hope you don't mind me asking, but is everything fine with your family? Ethan said that there were some legal concerns with your residence." I gave her a quick diplomatic description of the partition lawsuit, emphasizing the money dispute rather than the family drama. Barbara listened with increasing alarm. "Oh my," she exclaimed when I finished. "Ethan didn't tell us the whole story. We just assumed you were having a family disagreement over wedding expenses." "What did Sophia tell you?" Barbara appeared uncomfortable. "Well, she claimed you were resentful of not being the focus of attention and were attempting to wreck her marriage by generating financial stress. She made it sound like you were being vengeful about something minor." Of course she had. I wasn't surprised, but it still hurt to know Sophia was spreading that version of events to Ethan's family. The truth is, I carefully explained to Barbara that I was concerned about the amount of debt being incurred for the wedding. When I attempted to suggest alternatives, I was told that I was too young to grasp family priorities. I believed my only alternative was to preserve my personal financial interests. Barbara nodded slowly. "I have to admit that Ethan's father and I were astounded by how pricey everything was. We volunteered to help, but Sophia insisted that everything be exactly as she intended it, regardless of expense. We ended up spending twice what we had planned just to keep up." This was news to me. I had no idea Ethan's parents had similarly been coerced into overpaying on Sophia's vision. "Between you and me," Barbara said, "Ethan has been anxious about money since they returned from his honeymoon. Sophia keeps talking about purchasing a house and starting a baby right away, but they can't afford their present apartment with all of their wedding debt." After that chat, I felt more convinced than ever that I'd made the correct decision. It wasn't just about protecting myself from debt, it was also about refusing to perpetuate a pattern of financial carelessness that was harming everyone around Sophia, including her new husband. The court-ordered appraisal took place in late October, and the appraiser spent about 2 hours at the residence measuring rooms and taking photos. I wasn't there, but Mom called later to tell me the preliminary value was $325,000, which was close to what I had predicted months before. The lawyer says we should expect the final sale sometime in December or January, she added, her voice bland and resigned. Sophia keeps asking whether there is any way to stop it, but he has made it obvious that there isn't. How is she doing? I inquired, startling myself with the inquiry. Not doing well. She's been very anxious about the whole scenario. She keeps saying that this was not how her first year of marriage was supposed to be. I wanted to remind out that her first year of marriage could have turned out quite differently if she hadn't insisted on a wedding that cost more than most people's annual wage. But there was no use in telling Mom. Around the same time I began feeling pressure from unexpected sources. My father's sister, Aunt Susan, contacted me one evening to address the problem. "Rachel, I know you're wounded by your mother's decisions," she said. "But don't you think you're going too far? Your father adored that house. That's where you grew up. Forcing your mother and sister to sell it appears so final." I explained my reasoning, but Aunt Susan persisted. "Can't you work out a payment plan? Perhaps Sophia might repay you over time." "With what money, Aunt Susan?" "She doesn't have a consistent employment, and she recently incurred significant debt for her wedding." "So, what happens when she starts working full-time or when she and Ethan become more established?" After 20 minutes of talking in circles, I figured out what was bothering Aunt Susan the most. "Are you worried about how this will affect the family?" I asked. There was a pause. "Yes, quite candidly. People are talking, Rachel. They accuse you of being vengeful and money-hungry. It doesn't look good on any of us." There it was. The true issue was not my financial security or family relationships. It was the family's reputation among the community. "I'm sorry you're embarrassed," I informed her. "But I'm not going to stay in debt for the rest of my life to protect the family image." That exchange made me realize how many people expected me to simply accept the financial implications of Sophia's decisions, in order to avoid making a scene. Some relatives seemed scandalized by the idea that I may value my own well-being over family unity, but others were more encouraging. Uncle David, Dad's brother, called me a few days after our talk with Aunt Susan. "I heard Susan gave you grief about the house situation," he told me. "I wanted you to know that not everyone in the family thinks you're wrong." "Thank you, Uncle David. That means a lot. Your father was always concerned that your mother would spoil Sophia to the point that it would harm her in the long term. He used to tell Sophia needed to learn to deal with disappointment and make concessions, or she'd never be able to function as an adult." This was the second time someone brought up Dad's reservations regarding Sophia's upbringing. I wish Dad was still here to assist me negotiate this issue, but I was beginning to suspect that he may have approved my decision. By early September, everyone engaged was clearly feeling the tension. Maria told me that Mom had been calling in sick to work more regularly, and Sophia had been spending most days in her pajamas, avidly reading internet forums about family financial issues. The irony was that if Sophia had spent half as much time looking for steady work as she did researching ways to blame me for their issues, she might have been able to start paying off their debt. In November, almost 3 months after I filed the complaint, my mother contacted me from an unfamiliar phone number. I almost didn't respond, but something made me pick up. "Rachel," she said quietly, discouraged. "Can we talk?" We met at a downtown coffee shop. Mom was fatigued, had lost weight, and had black circles under her eyes. "The lawyer says we can't stop the sale," she stated without explanation. "I understand. The house will most likely sell for approximately $325,000. After paying off both mortgages and legal bills, we'll have approximately $95,000 to split 3 ways." I did the calculation in my head. That meant I'd collect around $33,000, which is exactly what I predicted months ago. "That's not enough for us to buy another house in this region," Mom said. "Especially with Sophia's student loans and wedding debt. We will have to relocate somewhere cheaper. Probably rent for a while." I felt a flash of regret, but I forced it down. "I'm sorry things worked out this way." "Are you truly sorry, Rachel?" The question lingered in the air between us. Was I sorry? I was sorry that it had come to this. That our family had imploded. That Dad wasn't there to help us navigate this mess. But I wasn't sorry that I'd stood up for myself and refused to let them mortgage my future for Sophia's fantasy wedding. "I'm sorry we couldn't find a better solution," I finally said. Mom nodded slowly. I know you believe I have always preferred Sophia. Perhaps I did. She just seemed to need more support and encouragement. You were always so capable, so independent. I would have been fine, I said. But that doesn't mean I should have to sacrifice my financial security for Sophia's wants. You're right. The acknowledgement appeared to cost her something. I got caught up in trying to give her the ideal wedding. I didn't consider the long-term consequences. We talked for another hour. It wasn't a complete reconciliation, but it was the first open discussion we'd had in years. Mom revealed that the wedding expenses had spiraled out of control, and she was too humiliated to admit she was in over her head. How about Sophia? I asked. Mom's face stiffened. Sophia is having difficulty accepting responsibility for any of this. She still believes you did this to hurt her personally. And you? Do you believe I did this to injure you? Mom considered the question carefully. I believe you did it to protect yourself. I don't like your techniques, but I understand why. In January, the house sold for $330,000, and I received a check for $33,000 after all fees and loan payments were deducted. I spent it as a down payment on a little condo closer to downtown, and I finally felt like I was building something for myself. Mom and Sophia ended up moving to a rental property approximately 30 minutes outside of the city, where the cost of living was lower. Mom had to take on a second part-time job to cover their bills, and Sophia finally became serious about finding steady work. I haven't spoken to Sophia since that day in my office. She has blocked me on all social media platforms, and she refuses to attend family events with me. According to other family, Sarah and Ethan are doing well, but the financial stress of the wedding debt has been difficult on their marriage. Mom and I have slowly begun to restore our relationship. We have lunch once a month, and while things aren't the same as they once were, they're more honest. She has stated that she enabled Sophia for years and that the wedding predicament was the result of a series of poor financial decisions. Sophia had a baby a few weeks ago, and Mom gave me pictures which made me feel a strange combination of feelings. I'm now an aunt, but I've never met my nephew, and I doubt I will anytime soon. Sometimes I question whether I did the right thing. Could I have solved the situation without ruining my family, or should I have just taken the debt to keep everyone together? But then I think of where I am now. I own my own home, have no debt other than my mortgage, and am creating a life based on my own choices and priorities. My relationship with my mother is based on mutual respect, rather than guilt and obligation. Sophia had her dream wedding, but at the expense of financial security and family connections. Mom learned some painful lessons about enabling and financial responsibility, and I learned that sometimes protecting yourself means making decisions that others will never understand or forgive. Will I do it again? Honestly, absolutely. I tried every other technique first, attempting to reason with them, compromise, and find alternatives. But they rejected my worries and patronized me at every point. When my mother told me, "You'll understand when you're older," she truly meant that my views and feelings didn't matter. That I was too young and inexperienced to form reasonable conclusions about my own life and financial prospects. Turns out, I understood perfectly well. I was being asked to give up my security for someone else's demands. I realized that my family considered me as a resource to be utilized rather as a person to be respected. And I realized that sometimes the only way to persuade people to take you seriously is to demonstrate that their actions have repercussions. The key I left on the table was more than a home key. It represented all I was leaving behind. The dysfunction, favoritism, financial irresponsibility, and the assumption that I would always be the one to make sacrifices for the happiness of others. I do not regret leaving it behind. Dad laughed. When I gave him his dream car on Thanksgiving, saying I was trying to buy his approval. That night, I took it back, cutting him off. I severed off communication with my father a few years ago after one big public I used to believe that family meant catastrophe that ruined everything for me. Unwavering commitment, regardless of how much respect you lost in the process. It turns out that some people consider family as just another word for ownership. Anyway, this story is not about vengeance or hatred. It's about what finally led me to walk away, and how I discovered that peace speaks louder than words. People believe that line work is all about climbing poles and mending wires. It is not. It's about keeping the power on when everyone else is home, warm and cozy. Thunderstorms, blackouts and lightning. We are the ones out there. That is what I do. And yes, it is risky. It's hard, but I enjoy it. I've been doing it for about 12 years, and every time I see the lights come back on after a long power outage, I feel like I've actually created something worthwhile. However, my father didn't see it that way. He used to joke that I used big boy Legos. He'd say, "Real success wears a tie, Michael." He sipped his dark coffee as if he were imparting life lessons. He's a retired accountant who still reads the Wall Street Journal in print and believes that a man's worth is determined by the number of meetings he participates in. My sister, Lily. Yes, she's the favorite. She has an online fitness account, publishes gym photos with encouraging captions like "rise and grind," and her father treats her as if she discovered fire. He describes her as a true entrepreneur. Sure, Dad. Posting squats for brand deals is clearly Wall Street level stuff. 2 years ago, after yet another, "When are you going to get a real job?" lecture I promised myself. I was done trying to explain my career. I would show him instead. When I wanted to quit, I remembered his voice. "You'll burn out before you ever get ahead." And the plan came to me one night when I noticed an old listing online. A 1972 Mustang Fastback. His dream car since I was a child. He talked about it as if it were his first passion. He'd say, "cherry red manual with black stripes." However, he never came close to buying one. Too pricey and impractical. I found one that required restoring and made it my side hobby for a year. Parts, paint, and late hours at my friend's garage. Each bolt was tightened by hand. It was perfect. Thanksgiving morning came faster than I expected. I parked the automobile outside my parents' house, covered in a tarp and a red bow. The house was full. Cousins, neighbors, and Lily are already live streaming her arrival as if it were a red carpet event. I carried myself in the same way I always had. Calm, laid back, and no big show. Dad was taking court in the living room, gloating about how Lily had been invited to a wellness expo. I waited for a lull before saying, "Hey Dad, come outside for a second." Everyone followed. He saw the car, froze, and glanced at me. "Is this a joke?" he inquired. "Nope," I replied. "It's yours. Merry Thanksgiving." He cautiously walked around it, touching the door and inspecting the paint. "A 72 Fastback," he stated slowly, almost as if he didn't believe it. For 1 second, I thought I actually did it. That maybe finally he'd be proud. Then he turned to the crowd, smirked, and said, "Guess my boy's trying to buy my approval." I didn't believe climbing poles paid this well. The laughs hit me harder than I anticipated. They laughed out loud, as if it were the funniest thing they'd ever heard. Lily giggled like a toddler. Someone's uncle applauded, and my father simply stood there, grinning, the star of his own little comic hour. I smiled too. Not because it was humorous, but because I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing me angry. I merely answered, "Yeah, I've got to keep the lights on somehow," and walked back inside. The remainder of the night was a whirl of phony happiness. Lily posed near the tree. Dad boasted about his joke, while I sat quietly in the rear, checking the time every few minutes. When dessert came out, I stood up and announced that I had an early shift the next morning. He laughed again. "Of course we can't keep the city running without you, huh?" Outside it was chilly enough that I could see my breath. I stood next to my truck watching the lights in the home flicker through the curtains. The Mustang sat in the driveway, pristine and sparkling, as if it did not belong there. I desired that moment, the respect, the nod, something. But deep inside, I knew better. I didn't feel sorry as I drove home. Just finished. Years of remarks, eye rolls, and jokes culminated in one thing. No matter what I accomplished, it would never be enough for him. He'd never think of me as anything more than a misguided youth. I stopped in my driveway, sat down and stared at my hands. The same hands that repaired electricity lines during storms and rebuilt that car from rust were strangely inadequate. Then I laughed, not bitter, but exhausted. "Happy Thanksgiving, old man," I mumbled. Because that was the moment it hit me. I didn't need him to be proud. I'd already made it. He just couldn't stand the fact that I did it without his permission. That statement kept running through my mind as I washed my teeth the next morning. I could still hear his idiotic laugh from last night. The, "guess my boy's trying to buy my approval" line repeated over and over, like an awful music I couldn't turn off. Then it struck me. The title and registration were still in my name. I stood in the kitchen, sipping cold coffee and looking out the window like a man prepared to do something dumb yet serene. I wasn't mad anymore, just finished. That automobile did not belong there, not in that driveway, not with him. By 7 a.m., I had taken an Uber back. The neighborhood appeared frozen. Thanksgiving lights remained on, lawns froze over, and a few garbage cans tipped over from the wind. I dropped off a block away and walked the rest of the way as if I were on a secret errand. The Mustang sat there, sparkling beneath a thin covering of ice. The red bow drooped from the dew, as if embarrassed to be still there. I unlocked the door, got into the driver's seat, and nearly laughed. I still held the key. The key turned smoothly. I rolled it slowly out of the driveway, careful not to wake anyone. The reflection of the porch lights followed me down the street, as if the car had finally left the wrong house. When I returned home, I parked the car in my garage, switched off the engine, and sat with my hands on the steering wheel. For the first time in days, I felt tranquil, as if I'd simply unplugged something that had been draining me for many years. I took a long shower, ate breakfast, and placed my phone face down. I did not even check it until midday. By then, it appeared that my notifications had multiplied in the dark. 18 missed calls, 10 messages, and 4 voicemails. Lily's message came up first. "Did you seriously take back Dad's present? You're ruining Thanksgiving. Everyone is talking about it. Grow up." Right underneath that, one from my father. People laughed because it was funny. Learn to take a joke. Then another a few minutes later. "You're embarrassing yourself now. No thanks. Number. Why did you take it back?" Just pure entitlement. As if the car were his birthright. I put down my phone and went into the garage. The Mustang glittered in the light, its engine still fresh from the earlier trip. I strolled around it slowly, hands in my pockets. I recalled every time he had mentioned my employment. Blue-collar muscle kid who works with tools because he can't do math. Perhaps if you studied harder, you wouldn't have to hang from poles for a career. He stated everything as if it were useful counsel, as if tearing me down was his form of drive. I used to laugh it off, telling myself that he just didn't get what I did. But deep down, I believe he did. He just resented the fact that I didn't need his permission to be proud of it. I wiped my hands with a cloth and opened my laptop, which displayed a historic automobile listing site. 1972 Mustang Fastback, refurbished with original V8 engine and fresh paint. I snapped a few pictures directly in the garage. Front angle, engine bay, and interior. I posted it with a little note. Only serious buyers will be considered. Title in hand. I was not keeping anything that reminded me of him. It didn't feel like my job anymore. It was a monument to a man who would never say "good job" without making a jab. I wanted to sell it so I could treat myself to something unrelated to him. Around 2 p.m., my phone vibrated again. Another voicemail. I put it on speaker while tightening a light fixture in the kitchen. "Michael, what the hell is wrong with you?" He said it with a weak voice and an expression of feigned rage. "You took the automobile back. Do you think that makes you look strong? People witnessed you doing that. You have embarrassed me. You have shamed this family. You think you can just return a present like a spoiled child?" I laughed aloud. The kid was spoiled. From a man who spent Thanksgiving morning frying his son for sport. I texted him back 3 words. Titles with my name. He did not respond after that, but Lily did. Of course she did. "You are acting insane. Dad's quite upset. He didn't intend anything with the joke. Why can't you let things go?" Because I had been letting things go for 30 years. That's why. Every insult, every jab, veiled as harmless banter. You don't realize how much you've consumed until you've stopped. That evening, I stood in the garage again, gazing at the automobile. Someone had already contacted me about it, offering to come over and see it that weekend. I accepted. When I turned off the garage lights, I caught sight of myself in the side mirror. I looked different. Not in a dramatic movie style, but rather steadier and crisper. That night, while lying in bed, I came to a simple realization. I'd spent years trying to prove to him that I had made it. But I didn't have to prove it anymore. The guy who thought success required a tie and a title might retain his empty house and false pride. I had calm and a car for sale. That weekend, a buyer stopped by. The older guy, presumably in his late 40s, recognized what he was looking at. He did not even haggle. I simply walked around the Mustang, nodded once and said, "Someone really took their time with this." "Yeah," I replied, handing him the keys. Someone did. By Monday morning, the automobile had disappeared. The garage was empty, and I felt lighter. I assumed my father would blow up again once he saw it was posted online, so I severed the cord for real before he could start his next meltdown. I grabbed my phone and searched through my contacts until I found Rachel, his wife, and my stepmother. She's the only one in that house who has ever treated me like a real human being. She didn't always take sides, but she never pretended the person was easy to get along with. My text was brief, perhaps 4 lines. "Hello Rachel. I just wanted to let you know that I'm taking a break back from everything. I'm done with family vacations, repairing things, and attempting to make peace when it's one-sided. I wish you the best. Before pushing submit, I took a second to stare at the screen. No essays, no explanations, just the reality. Her reply arrived 10 minutes later. You've done enough, Michael. Do not feel guilty. You deserve to be at ease. Simple and honest. Probably the best thing anyone on that side of the family has ever said to me. After that, I figured I'd get ahead of the pack. My mother lived in Arizona, remarried, divorced, and currently teaches sewing classes out of her garage. We occasionally discuss about little issues such as the weather, job, and so forth. But this time, I called her legitimately. She picked up on the second ring. Hey stranger, she said. Hey mom. I did something. I said. That sounds like something you usually say before bad news, she joked. I told her about the Thanksgiving mess, the Mustang, the joke, everything. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, there was silence. Then she said, Good. Good. I asked. That's not the part where you tell me to make peace. She laughed softly. Michael. I was wondering when you'd finally stop trying to fix him. It's about time. That threw me off. My mother isn't the emotional type, never has been, but she sounded calm, even relieved. Then she said something I didn't expect. You know why I left him, right? She asked. I figured it was the arguing, I said. She sighed. It was the control. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the wall, imagining him saying it in the same smug tone he used when he told me climbing poles wasn't a real job. I used to sell my work at fairs, but he told me it wasn't respectable enough for an accountant's wife. She went on to say, he does not love people, Michael. He audits them. Their worth is measured similarly to balance sheets. You could give him the entire globe, and he'd still find an error somewhere. That sentence resonated with me. He audits people. And that's precisely what he did. Every interaction was a calculation of how much he could critique and how much power he still had. I told her, I guess I finally grew weary of being one of his lousy investments. She laughed. You're the only one that actually paid off. He just doesn't like the return coming in without his name on it. We spoke for another hour, and she sounded cheerful and free, which I hadn't heard in years. When we hung up, I realized she wasn't surprised at all. She had been silently waiting for this moment, hoping I'd find it out. After that call, I remained on the couch for a bit, scrolling through old texts between my father and Lily, messages that looked normal until you read them, little digs disguised as conversation. Dad once asked me, any chance you'll advance to management, or are you more of a hands-on forever type? It all read like the same script, me proving them minimizing. I was weary of it. So I did what I should have done years ago. I opened my contacts, blocked both of their numbers, and then navigated through social media, deleting them from every platform. There was no announcement, no post about cutting off toxicity, no attention-seeking things. Just quiet deletion. My phone buzzed once, an unknown number. Most likely my father using a separate phone to get across the block, and I didn't respond. Instead, I just watched it ring and stop. Later, I sat out on the porch with a cold soda, scrolling through a few job listings in Arizona just for curiosity. Not because I needed to move, but because I could. Because I didn't owe anyone an explanation anymore. It was strange how light everything felt, as if my life had been filled with background noise for so long that I forgot what quiet sounded like. Before heading in, I sent one last text to Rachel, not my father. Just so you know, I blocked him and Lily. I'm done. I appreciate you always being decent. She responded a minute later. I understand. You're doing the right thing. I smiled, put the phone down and locked the door. For the first time in years there was no weight sitting on my chest. Walking away isn't disrespect. It's self-respect. I should have known my father wouldn't let that be the last of it. About a week after blocking him, I was at work climbing down from a transformer pole when I noticed a text from a coworker, Nate. Bro, everything good with you? I responded back. He supplied a screenshot of an email chain between him, another lineman, and our foreman. The email was from my father, and the subject line was, concern for my kid. He wrote, Michael has been acting erratic recently. He has alienated himself from his family, made unpredictable financial decisions, and may be struggling mentally. I'm concerned he'll do something reckless. Please keep an eye on him. My jaw clenched so hard I feared my teeth might break. I could almost hear his tone, calm, sympathetic, and carefully constructed to make me appear like a problem. I contacted Nate. You didn't believe that garbage, right? Of course not, man, he said. But buddy, That is messed up. Who does this to their own child? Someone who treats people like projects, I mumbled. By the end of the day, 2 more co-workers messaged me, and the tale was the same. My father had contacted people he didn't even know personally. Managers, union reps, anyone connected to me, all under the banner of concern. It wasn't concern, it was sabotage. The old man didn't like that I stopped playing by his script, so he decided to write a new one, starring me as the unstable son. So I called my friend Mark, one of the union lawyers I'd worked with during a safety dispute years ago. Guy's sharp, no nonsense. He took a piece of something crunchy and asked, "What's up, Michael?" I recounted everything. The emails, the stories, the bogus concern. He didn't even sound surprised. Classic image management, he said. He's developing a story, so if you ever call him out publicly, people believe you're the crazy one. Can I shut it down? I asked. Oh sure, do you want me to handle it? Please. Within an hour he emailed me a brief, professional, and lethal draft of an official cease and desist letter written to my father, citing defamation and harassment and telling him 48 hours to stop contacting anyone linked with me. I approved it right away, and 2 days later, Mark texted me a screenshot of the delivery confirmation. I expected silence, but instead I got a storm. That afternoon my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize and I let it go to voicemail. When I listened later, it was my father's voice, shaky, theatrical and full of forced outrage. Is this how you treat your father? You send attorneys after the family? Do you think that makes you a man? Michael, you've embarrassed me again. Do you really care what this does to our name? Our name? Like he was running a corporation, not a family. I deleted it without replying. Not even worth my breath. The next day Lily called from her other phone. I didn't pick up. She texted instead. Dad thinks you sent legal threats. What is wrong with you? He's heartbroken. You're being cruel. I replied back. Tell him to stop contacting my coworkers, and I'll stop defending myself. She saw it, but didn't respond. Typical Lily. Defend him first. Think later. For over a week, everything was quiet. Then one day around lunch, I opened Facebook and nearly spit up my sandwich. There it was. A photo of my father lying in a hospital bed wearing one of those patient gowns, an oxygen tube under his nose, with the message, "Stress can really hurt the heart when your own blood turns on you. Appreciate your family while you still can." I just stared at it, speechless. Within minutes the post was inundated with comments. Old family, friends, churchgoers, and accounting co-workers rushed in to offer their condolences. Stay strong, Mr. Thompson. You've raised a good son, he will come around. Kids today don't understand loyalty. Lily, of course, responded with a heart emoji and, "I love you, Dad." It was like watching a live performance of the Martyr Chronicles with Dad as the victim. I didn't comment, message, or defend myself. I just closed the app and went back to work. But that night, I couldn't stop thinking about how he'd pulled it off so easily. He wasn't even sick, just bored and hungry for attention, and I knew him too well. The next morning, my foreman Tom approached me in the yard and said, "Hey, just checking in. Is everything okay with you?" I smirked. "Let me guess. Did you see Facebook?" He nodded awkwardly. "Yeah." I didn't know what to believe, so I decided to ask straight up. "I'm alright," I replied. "He's not. He's just addicted to pretending he is." Tom chuckled and shook his head. "Family, right?" "Something like that," I responded. After work I went home and sat in my truck for a minute before heading inside. The sky was dismal and calm, and it dawned on me that he didn't want peace. He wanted an audience. Every move he made was about control, about bending reality to make him appear noble. And I looked broken. He wasn't sick, just addicted to control, and I wondered if cutting him off had been too harsh. I used to second-guess myself all the time, but not anymore. One afternoon, while fixing a breaker in my garage, I received a call from a storm response company in Arizona. It was a big job, 3-month contract, good pay. They needed line workers to help rebuild infrastructure after monsoon damage. I didn't even hesitate. The universe had given me a reason to leave. That same night, I put my apartment up for rent, cleaned out the garage, and boxed up the few things I actually cared about. My tools, some photos, and a worn leather jacket my mother had given me years ago. Everything else could stay. I wasn't fleeing. I was just tired of standing still. By the following month, I was in Arizona, where my mother lived in a single-story house surrounded by dry hills and cactus fields. When I pulled into her driveway, she came out wiping her hands on a sewing apron, smiling. "You're really here," she said. "Yeah," I responded, thinking I'd see what peace looked like. She hugged me quickly, as if she didn't know how to do it anymore, and motioned toward the house. "I made lasagna. Don't ask if it's healthy." The first week seemed unusual, with no work-related emergencies or caustic texts from Lily. There was no tension in the background, just open sky, long drives, and tranquil nights. I moved into a little home near my mother's, nothing extravagant, with a single bedroom, a small yard, and a view of power lines crossing through the desert horizon, which was fitting. My days were spent working on the storm contract. Weekends were slower, and I'd help neighbors fix porch lights, patch fences, and do other small jobs. It was hard work, long hours, and the kind of job that made you fall asleep the moment you sat down. But I loved it because it felt honest. Every bolt I tightened, every line I reset reminded me that I had built my own life, with no help from anyone. So people would come by with tiny projects and coffee as payment, which I didn't mind because it was pleasant labor with no drama or expectations. Then one Thursday night, I received a text from Rachel, whom I hadn't heard from in months. "Hey Michael, just a heads up. Your father tried to use the old emergency credit card you gave him years ago. It got declined." I froze mid-bite. I'd completely forgotten that card existed. It was something I'd set up years ago when he had surgery. I texted back. "How do you know?" He returned home upset, saying the card had been refused 3 times in one day for groceries, petrol, and something at Home Depot. I checked my account that night to confirm, and the activity log showed all 3 failed attempts. The next morning, I called the bank and canceled the card, then asked them to close the entire account so there were no leftovers. The rep asked if I wanted a replacement. "No," I said. "I'm done lending out lifelines." It felt symbolic, ending that one last connection. That card had been a silent chain. One he could pull on whenever he wanted. Later that night, I told my mother about it at dinner, and she didn't seem surprised. "He never wanted help," she said, setting down her fork. "He wanted control." "There's a distinction." She was correct. He didn't miss me. He missed access. Every favor, card and phone call had always been about convenience, not concern. A week later, Rachel sent another text, this time short. "He's unhappy you canceled it. Said, you're punishing him." I told him, "It's your right." He didn't like that, and I grinned when I read it, not out of malice, but out of humor. The man honestly believed that cutting him off financially was a moral violation. That night, I sat on my porch with the desert wind blowing through, the stars were bright, the air was quiet, and for once, my mind wasn't replaying old arguments or unfinished sentences. I just sat there watching the power lines stretch across the horizon like silver threads. The same lines I used to climb for a living. There was something poetic about it, I suppose. The same thing he mocked me for had become the very thing that gave me freedom. I thought about all the years I'd spent trying to fix things. Broken conversations, old resentments, relationships that were never going to work. All for what? To keep the peace for people who didn't care if I had any left for myself. I leaned back in my chair, finished my drink, and muttered to no one, "Guess I finally learned what to stop fixing." I stopped fixing everything that wasn't my job, including him, but he apparently still thought I was on call. It had been about 8 months since I canceled that card, and I was in Los Angeles for a week-long senior line worker training course. I hadn't thought about my father in months, and I hadn't even stopped wondering what new act he was pulling online. The morning it happened, I was walking out of the hotel lobby, ID badge around my neck, scrolling through my schedule, when I heard it. "Michael." That voice could cut glass. I halted, turned, and there he was, my father, standing across the street in khakis and an ironed shirt, clutching a folder, as if he was preparing to submit a complaint. I didn't move, and he smiled as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't spent the last 2 years trying to ruin my reputation. "Can we talk?" he yelled out, crossing the street. "Let's chat like men." I should have moved away, but I didn't. Whether it was curiosity or closure, I stood there as he paused a few feet in front of me, adjusting his spectacles as if he were preparing to give a TED talk on parenting. "You look good," he replied. "I noticed your name mentioned as a participant in this tournament. I didn't expect to see you here." I didn't respond, just waited. He sighed dramatically. "I'm not sure why you've made me the villain in your novel. It was just a joke, Michael. You took things too seriously. You've always been overly serious." There it was. The identical script, tone, and blame shift. I nearly grinned at how predictable it was. You followed me down to tell me I can't handle a joke? I said. He scowled as if he didn't expect me to be so calm. I tracked you down to make peace. You've humiliated me and insulted my family, and you behave as if I deserve it. I don't act like it, I replied. You did. He shook his head and moved closer. You've changed, son. You used to be respectful. Now you speak to me as if I were a stranger. You are, I replied plainly. And quit calling me son. You forfeited the right to make me your punchline. That got to him, and his face twitched with the same mix of confusion and fury he used to feel when someone disagreed with him. He opened his folder and brought out some printed screenshots, which I assumed were social media comments or texts. This isn't who you are, he replied, shaking the page slightly. You're more than this bitterness. I know you miss me. I laughed softly. You know what's funny? You've been mistaken about me my entire life. Might as well include that one on the list. He scowled. I miss my son, he murmured. The one who used to respect me. I sipped my coffee. You don't miss me. You lack control. And I owe you nothing. He looked at me for a moment, calculating his next move, before stepping back, tripping on his own heel, and throwing his arms wide. Don't hit me, he said loudly. Wait, too loud. Please stop. I froze. People on the sidewalk turned right away. A couple strolling their dogs came to a halt. Even a man dragging baggage peered over. Someone across the street began filming. What the hell are you talking about? I responded, taking one step back and raising my hands. He stumbled again, faking it, holding his shoulder. He is attacking me. Please stop. A woman near the curb gasped. Sir, you need to calm down. Someone else yelled, Hi guy? What is wrong with you? He is an old man. My stomach fell, not out of fear, but out of disgust. The man had rehearsed this, and when the folder hit the sidewalk, papers scattered like a movie scene. He was breathing heavily and performing like it was Broadway. Dad, I responded slowly and quietly. You're embarrassing yourself. He shook his head dramatically, yet loud enough for the audience. You've always had a temper. Always. I stiffened my chest as I heard someone nearby exclaim, I got it on video. Not because I was guilty, but because I knew how easily he could twist this. Then, with perfect timing, a man emerged from a bakery across the street, apron still on and white flour all over his hands. Hey, he exclaimed. He didn't touch him. Everyone turned. I watched the whole thing, the baker said, hurrying over. That old man is faking it. The younger one hasn't touched him. He's been talking calmly the entire time. My father halted in the middle of his performance, still slightly bent, as if he couldn't decide whether to keep performing or stop. The baker approached, pointing directly at him. You should be embarrassed attempting to pull that in public. Cameras are everywhere, buddy. You just made a fool of yourself. Several people whispered, and one woman who had been shooting lowered her phone. My father's face turned pale, and the performance fell apart entirely. He fixed his shirt, murmured something about being misunderstood, and then looked at me. I addressed his gaze. You just proved why I left. I turned and walked off toward the corner. The crowd parted silently, and I didn't look back. I could feel his gaze burning into the back of my head. But I didn't care. By the end of the block, the tension had drained out of me. My hands were steady, my heartbeat was normal, and I wasn't even angry. I was just done. I had had enough of the lies, theatrics, and incessant manipulation, and when I returned to the hotel, the front desk clerk gave me a concerned look. Is everything okay out there? I nodded. Yeah, I answered. Just someone who doesn't know when to quit. I went up to my room, placed my badge on the table, and looked out the window at the city lights. A year later, that's precisely what he was. For months there were no calls, stunts or performances, just silence. The type he always claimed he wanted but never knew how to live with. Cars drove silently and distantly beneath him. That was the last time I saw him. I was living outside of Sedona by then. After that training in Los Angeles, I was promoted to lead a small crew for contract jobs. My days were simple: work, gym, and occasionally assisting a neighbor in repairing a broken fence or light fixture. Most days ended with me grilling dinner on the back porch, watching the sunset paint the desert orange. I didn't think much about my father anymore. He was a chapter I'd closed until he tried to write himself back in. It began with a text from an unknown number, in the same tone I'd heard anywhere. Michael, it's your father. I'd want to talk. Family is family. Life's too short to carry grudges. I glanced at it, shaking my head. There was no apology, no accountability, just a rehashed slogan. I didn't respond. 2 days later, another one arrived. You'll regret pushing your family away one day. I didn't even block the number. I just muted it and let him shout into the blank. Then came the GoFundMe, which Rachel texted me with no comment, just the link, and the title. Helping a father recover from estrangement and health issues. The description was worse. I'm a retired man dealing with heart difficulties and emotional turmoil after losing communication with my only son. I'm fighting to keep my home and restore my life. He didn't mention the phony heart attack, the smear campaign, or that I'd given him more chances to change than he ever deserved. The target was $8,000. After 4 weeks, it had $110. The comments were also quiet, with one from a cousin wishing prayers. Rachel called one afternoon, and I picked up half anticipating more turmoil. Anything was a message from Old Accountant 77 who said, "Stay strong." Lily didn't share anything, which shocked me. She's humiliated, Rachel explained. The entire stunt made her appear ridiculous. People posed queries that she couldn't answer. Good, I told her. Maybe she'll finally stop trying to defend the indefensible. There was a silence. Rachel sighed quietly. He still talks about you, you know. Says you'll come around eventually. I said, doesn't make it true. I thanked her for informing me, then returned to work. I didn't think about it again. It was just another of his performances, another way to get attention after the applause had stopped. Weeks passed, the fundraiser vanished, as did his new phone number. Lily stopped posting about family dinners and forgiveness. Rachel kept in touch on occasion, mostly with weather updates and photos of her garden. There was no drama. My mother came to visit one weekend. We made breakfast together, she cooked, I drank coffee, and she glanced around my house, admiring the clean space, repaired shelves, and peaceful routine. You seem settled, she replied, smiling. I am, I informed her. She nodded. He's still attempting to entice folks back in. Do not take the bait. I won't, I replied. He may say whatever he wants. I'm finished listening. That evening, after she left, I sat on the porch again, watching lightning flash over the hills. The air smelled like rain and dust, and for the first time in years, I realized I wasn't angry at him, the past or anything. I hadn't spoken to him in over a year, and for once, that silence wasn't heavy, but rather peaceful and complete. He'd spent his entire life trying to prove that he was the smartest man in the room, that he always had the upper hand in the spotlight. He assumed I'd always come crawling back, but I'm not that kid anymore. I have peace, and he has stillness. My dad called my career filthy and cut me out of the family fortune. Then asked me for $120,000 when my brother wrecked the family business. Henry here, everyone. I manage a pet care chain in New York and am 30. The employment is secure and pays well. My residence, car, and small sunny workplace allow me to work late into the evening. Someone could believe I'm lucky. A proud, loving family is behind me. But no family. Maybe the one I left exactly a year ago. I recall standing in a huge family gathering and saying, I don't belong here anymore. It wasn't an easy decision. When you're at the edge of quiet and disappointment, you must choose, keep going, or break the pattern. I'm presenting this story not to blame anyone or defend myself, but to remind myself that to genuinely live, you must be willing to lose what you believed was impossible. I left my family on Easter Sunday last year without regret. After many frigid spring showers, the sun shone sufficiently to dry the wet. I drove out of Manhattan early, past folks going to church, quietly glad that our family was finally together again. Being on time has always meant arriving 15 minutes early for me, and this time was no different. When I arrived, the house was full of chatter and laughter. It was more crowded than previous holidays, with relatives from near and far, many of whom I recognized by face, but not by name. Mom mentioned Dad had something significant to announce today, not asking what it was. Mom loved chocolate mousse cake from a Brooklyn alleyway bakery, so I put it on the kitchen counter. I usually brought a bottle of red wine, a box of gourmet pastries, or a bouquet of her favorite flowers home in recent years. These tiny presents didn't change our distance, but I hoped they could have maintained a piece of the son I was still striving to be. 20 minutes later, the celebration started normally. Glasses clinking, grilled meat and baked potatoes in the house, and usual chats about real estate, stock prices, and kids' schools. I silently ate and listened at the corner of the table. I didn't join. I didn't need to. About 30 minutes after everyone had settled in, my dad stood up, hoisted his glass of wine and spoke in his booming voice, which he only used for big announcements. "Everyone please quiet down, we have something to share." The place went quiet immediately. He said, "Our family has come to a decision. Starting today, all the assets including the company, the shares, and the real estate will be handed over to Matteo." The room went silent. My heart slowed by half a beat. Like everyone expected, the clapping was loud, hurried, and enthusiastic, nearly on cue. My mom spoke next, her eyes beaming like she'd found her life's mission. "Matteo's been working at the family company for 5 years now, and he'll be the one to carry on the legacy, to take it to the next level." I sat staring at my water glass after their statement. I felt the glasses chill in my fingertips, but it didn't stop my chest pain. Waves of applause hit my chair like hammers. No one solicited my opinion. Nobody looked at me. No one asked, "What about Henry?" I was there but unnoticed. I was there, but they thought I was out of the story. Though I knew they liked Matteo, I didn't expect this. My younger brother Matteo is 2 years younger. We weren't inseparable as kids, but we never fought. Since my childhood was marked by justice, I thought our parents saw us as equals. Back then, everything was split. 2 birthday cakes, 2 identical candy bags, 2 virtually identical bikes with different colors. Our punishment was always the same when we got in trouble. No one got off easier. After we scribbled on the wall, Mom made us kneel and scrub every pencil mark. No partiality. I thought my family was fair till I was 18, sitting in the living room on an early September evening. Dad heard I wanted to study veterinary medicine. Veterinary doctor. I studied schools, chose one, and got a partial scholarship. I just needed some cash assistance to start. He might ask about my ambitions, give me advice, or just nod encouragement. Instead, he sat with arms crossed, gaze frigid, like I had said something shameful. "I'm not putting a single dime into that career. If that's what you want, you're on your own." I lost all hope of what family meant with that one sentence, simple but final. I didn't get it then. I didn't understand how a career choice could make me feel traitorous. It took years to understand that my choices didn't match their agenda. After that, I wasn't the family's pride. That job gradually fell to Matteo. Everything steadily changed after I told my dad I wanted to study veterinary medicine. Through peaceful, progressive detachment, not harsh words or disapproval, I became silent over time. Perhaps that was the price you paid for deviating from your plan. Even though we were growing apart, I never left them when they needed me. I still sent Mom Mother's Day roses. When Dad needed a new AC in summer, I helped. I kept coming when the company struggled. I never kept score, so maybe the betrayal hurt so much because it came from the one person I thought would never treat me like an outsider. My daddy. A year ago, he called late one night, his voice low and wavering, like he'd struggled with himself before calling. I'll never forget what he said. The company was in crisis that night. They needed $80,000 to prevent collapse after a significant contract fell through at the last minute. I suggested writing a formal statement to the family or documenting my firm contributions. But he stopped that immediately. He comforted me with one sentence. "When your mother and I are gone, you'll still have a share of the company. This is family business after all." At that point, I asked for nothing else. I wired $80,000 to the company account the next morning. My father's quiet comments after a long phone pause were the only contract. "When your mother and I are gone, you'll still have a share of the company. This is family business." And I nodded. He stressed family, which I foolishly thought. But now I think I should have requested a signed agreement. Maybe I should have known. Some individuals only value family when they're needed. At Easter last year, when my father announced that Matteo would inherit everything, I didn't stay quiet like I had so many times. My voice was clear and firm. "What about me?" The question rang out as the wine glasses hovered. Room plunged into awkward silence. Some individuals stared at me as if they realized I'd been there all along. I heard whispers across the room. "That's right." "What about Henry?" "He's Matteo's older brother." As tension grew like a fog, my mother intervened with her usual kind manner, trying to make something cruel appear acceptable. "Henry, you already have a career, a house, a car. But Matteo, he has nothing. After she finished, I looked her in the eyes. I spoke softly, yet each syllable hit hard like stones. That career. I built it with my own hands. I left home at 18 and figured everything out on my own. I didn't take a single cent from you or Dad. I earned a scholarship, worked through school, and saved every dollar. Meanwhile, you paid for all of Mateo's tuition and covered all his expenses. And now, you hand everything over to him like I never existed. I'm your son too. Before anyone could answer, Mateo spoke smugly. Mom's right. You shouldn't be competing with me. I spun and pointed at him. Shut your mouth. You don't even have the right to speak. Silence filled the room. Then my dad smashed his hand on the table, his voice shrill and each word a slap. That's enough, Henry. Mateo followed the path we laid out. You didn't. If you hadn't chosen those filthy animals, this company would have been yours. I froze. Then I replied, what the hell are you talking about? That's an insult. Do you even realize that it was thanks to those so-called filthy animals that I made the $80,000 that saved your company? And if you look down on my job that much, pay me back. Right now. After I said it, he stood up, red-faced, eyes flashing, and yelled, I'm not giving you a damn cent. I brought you into this world, raised you, fed you, educated you. Do you know how much I spent on you? And now you're out there cleaning up after dogs and cats. You're an embarrassment. The moment he completed that phrase, I was done. I spoke again after nearly 30 seconds, trying to keep my voice steady. If that's how you feel, then we have nothing to do with each other from now on. Don't come looking for me again. I turned away but stopped to say goodbye, not to apologize. Dad, I never asked to be born, so please don't throw your so-called sacrifices in my face to guilt me into following your path. And don't use them as leverage to force me into carrying the weight of this family. After that, I left with my head held high and never looked back. That night I returned to my place before 9. I immediately went to the bathroom. I blast started the water. It was necessary to wipe away the hatred, injustice, and hurt from that evening. Nearly 20 minutes passed before I left. I felt lighter, and my mind less weighty. But that calm emptiness stayed. I brewed a steaming black coffee to stay awake. As I sat calmly by the window that night, I thought about the day I turned 18, and left home with only an old suitcase, a few pieces of clothing, and the money I'd saved. Despite working part-time, I struggled to afford living expenditures. My parents never asked if I was okay over those years. My first 2 years following graduating were spent in a modest studio apartment. I cut cuts every month to pay school loans. Then something unexpected happened in my 3rd year. A peaceful Sunday afternoon. I had no plans or shifts that day. I had a funny idea. Why not make a pet care video? So I did. I used books and shoeboxes as a tripod, propped up my phone, and spoke like a friend. After finishing, I submitted the video on Facebook and YouTube. I did it for pleasure without expectations. If someone found it, great. If not, no problem. Within 2 days it became viral. Within 48 hours, platforms had nearly 3 million views. I was stunned. I refreshed the page, believing it was a glitch. When the comments and messages started coming in, I realized people needed what I had to say. I made additional vids. My initial thought was to impart knowledge. I got my first $2,000 from ads and sponsorships a month later. I stared at that number on my screen for a long time, surprised, anxious, and wondering if I was dreaming. But the number grew. 9 months later, I had 1 million YouTube subscribers. I had over 2 million followers across all platforms in just 1 year. Then pet care brands reached out. They wanted to collaborate, sponsor videos, and offer me goods to review. I understood this wasn't a hobby anymore. It was something more. Finally, with crowd support, I opened my own pet care store. I named the company Whisker and Paw because I wanted to share kindness and love, something my family never gave me as a child. First location was more successful than expected. Perhaps it was because of the community that had backed me since my earliest films. Or because people could sense my sincerity in treating all customers, two-legged and four-legged. After a few months I had to employ more workers, extend hours, and hunt for a second location. The second branch opened a year later. 4 years later, Whisker and Paw had 7 outlets in the city's boroughs, and over 30 full-time and part-time staff. Several have been with me since the beginning. Few months ago, few joined. But everyone is part of my handmade family. I never gloat about my success, especially to my family and relatives. That lesson came from an industry mentor who gave me advice when I was nobody. He mentioned something I still remember. Never flaunt your success. Not even to your parents. Back then I didn't understand. I thought, why not tell your family? Shouldn't they know your positive deeds first? But as I aged, I understood more. Everyone has envy, some more than others. Sharing your achievement doesn't merely garner admiration. An open wallet, they think. You'll be asked to lend money, offer business ideas, or help out since we're family. When you decline, admiration becomes resentment. Resentment. So I kept quiet. I returned home for the holidays. I still brought pastries, gifts, and maybe a beautiful bottle of wine or a thoughtful gift for Mom. However, I never mentioned money, staff, or new projects. They saw me as Henry, the pet sitter. Personally, I preferred it that way. About 6 months after Easter dinner, I didn't text, call, or go home. My parents, Charles and Margaret Walker, were silent too. 0 check-in texts, no unexpected calls. It felt like my disappearance was planned. I wasn't sad. In those early days, waking up without checking for Mom's message was like a weight lifted. Every night I could sit alone in my quiet apartment, drink late-night coffee, and work without being pulled back into that vague sense of family responsibility. First time in years I could name the feeling. Freedom. However, 6 months ago, my phone rang as I was pouring a second cup of coffee on a Saturday morning. It was Dad. His name appeared on the screen and I froze in the kitchen. I held the half-full coffee cup with my thumb over the decline button, but I didn't touch it. I briefly considered the possibility that they'd altered. Imagine a call to apologize. I don't know why I believed that. Maybe I still wanted to believe they'd thought about everything after that night. Maybe I still had a tiny bit of hope. A few rings later, I replied. My father's voice was immediate. No small talk or hesitation. He adds, Henry, the company's in serious trouble. Mateo signed the wrong contract. Now we're looking at $120,000 in damages. Can you help us? For the family's reputation, for the Walker name. Without thinking, I said, $80,000 was more than enough, Dad. If you want my help, start by paying that back. The other end is silent. He looked furious or disappointed, but I didn't care. I said, before he could respond, and if the only thing you're trying to save is the family name, let me remind you. That name never once stood up for me. I let them figure out the $120,000 mess after hanging up. After rejecting my father on the phone the day before, I figured they'd leave me alone. I misjudged them. Next morning, my doorbell rang loudly, rapidly, and insistently past 7 a.m. No courtesy or hesitation. Pushy, demanding. Like someone was forcing me out. I hesitated when I opened the door. Mateo and my parents stood there. I didn't invite them. I fully blocked the entrance at the threshold, signaling this is no longer our shared place. I knew why they were there, so I said it clearly, but calmly. If you're here for $120,000, turn around. I'm not helping. My words resonated clearly along the quiet hallway despite my low voice. After I finished, my mom retreated. Something else made her eyes crimson, not tears. Maybe stress. Maybe disappointment. Maybe rage. With nowhere to go, she spoke next, attempting to sound gentle but tight. Henry, you have a whole chain of pet care stores. $120,000 isn't that much to you. I'm begging you. If you don't help, the company will collapse. Our family will lose everything. Mateo moved half step forward. My eyes were ignored. I'd never heard his voice so quiet. Henry, please, just this once. I know I messed up. I know I ruined everything. I remained silent. I let them speak. Didn't interrupt. My head didn't tremble. I stared at them, grasping the doorframe like my boundaries would come apart if I let go. After some pause, I replied slowly and clearly, leave, before I call the police. My father's face hardened instantaneously. My mother opened her mouth to say more, but I stopped her. I repeated it louder to avoid confusion. I have nothing to do with any of you anymore. You all have to live with the consequences of your choices. Your favoritism, your silence. Matteo too. If the company collapses, that's not a tragedy. It's a consequence. And I'm not responsible for saving anyone. I closed the door. Firm final. I returned to my cold coffee when they were gone. My mind was already going in another direction. My mind whispered a question that stopped me mid-sip. How did they know I have 7 stores? Never told. I never mentioned it. Always kept my distance. Even at rare family meetings before everything fell apart, I never mentioned my business size or earnings. They didn't follow me on LinkedIn or Instagram. Then I realized, YouTube. One thing I couldn't hide. I still post pet care videos here. Gentle, meaningful clips about my profession and animal love. Someone they knew may have sent them a link. Maybe they found it themselves. That sent a shudder down my spine. Not because I feared discovery. I knew what they became when they sensed an opportunity to exploit. I acted immediately. I unlocked my phone's message screen and typed each phrase clearly. The sentences were like door knocks. If you, Mom or Matteo, take any action that damages my reputation or business, I will sue. I'm serious. After sending, I prayed they wouldn't cross the border. Matteo kept going despite my clear warning. Next day he posted on Facebook, Reddit and Instagram. After not reading it right away, friends sent it to me. I was questioned by firm employees and the media. I didn't need to read every word to understand his writing. His post stated that I abandoned my family when they were near bankruptcy, and that I ignored my parents' requests for aid. He stated I expelled them like strangers from my house. Of course, he noted that I had mistreated my flesh and blood before. The plot was so twisted that I couldn't tell what was real. People don't care about the truth. They just want an emotional story with a cold, affluent villain, a struggling, innocent family, and a terrible ending they can gossip about and condemn. I lost clients after Matteo posted that morning. Numerous grooming appointments were canceled. Our company's social media was inundated. I received hate mail in my inbox. And I risked closing my businesses if I didn't act. That afternoon I saw Brian, my old buddy and attorney. He helped me write my first store lease. I texted him one sentence without calling. I need to see you urgently. Between 2 meetings, Brian fit me in. His workplace was clean, quiet, and bright from a wall of windows when I visited. As I explained everything, he sat behind his desk with his fingers intertwined. He received printed comments, revenue figures illustrating the impact, and a screenshot of Matteo's initial post, which I had saved. After I finished, he looked up, folded his arms, and gave me an unreadable half-smile. Then Brian said, "You just hit the jackpot, Henry." I frowned. I gently asked after a few seconds, "What do you mean?" Brian laughed and leaned his head toward me. "I mean you've got nothing to worry about. Everything Matteo's done, the post, the damage to your business, and your personal and brand reputation, adds to a solid civil case. And with the amount of evidence you've got, I can tell you right now, you're looking at a pretty big payout." I felt like a weight had been lifted. Brian continued calmly. "Matteo is going to be held accountable for what he's done, legally and financially. And if the court rules fairly, the compensation could exceed everything you've lost." I stopped talking. "Yes," I nodded. I then opened my backpack, laid my prepared paperwork on the table, and told Brian, "Draft the case. I'm giving you full authority to handle this." Brian smiled and offered his hand. Not for congratulations, but for a firm start. That afternoon, I signed the power of attorney. There was no warning text, waiting for someone to change, or emotion this time. Going to sue. I felt guilt-free for the first time. Matteo's lawyer contacted Brian weeks after I signed the power of attorney. They wanted settlement talk. Not surprised. Like them, they only arrive at the table from the edge. They only pretend to resolve things gently after losing control. As expected, Brian called me into his office Thursday afternoon. He casually showed me a tiny file and remarked, "Your family wants to propose a deal." Looking at him, I said nothing. Brian opened the file, slid the top page to me and continued. "They want to sell the company. In exchange, they'd like to stay on as internal advisors." I scanned the lines from a seat. Nothing was technically wrong. Nothing was illogical. I only wanted no part of them anymore. I looked up, my voice calm and clear, not sour, like someone done with needless concessions. Tell them I'm not interested. Brian nodded slightly. Why wasn't asked. I got up, got my coat, and turned to him before leaving. I'm not buying the company. I'm not hiring relatives as consultants. I hesitated, then added to finish. I'm not saving a family just to keep being treated like a walking wallet. The trial began 3 months after Matteo uploaded the fraudulent information. Although the Manhattan District Courthouse was close to my flat, I left earlier that morning. I needed a few quiet minutes in the car to breathe, regain my composure, and remember that I was doing the right thing for justice, not anger. I entered the courtroom to find Matteo. He sat next to his lawyer, apprehensive and trying to stay calm. The arrogance and contemptuous attitude he gave me when we argued at home were gone. He gazed down more than up that day. I looked forward to it. Brian was ready. He listed every loss, canceled contracts, store closures, income declines, and employee compensation. Official stamps, receipts, and paperwork supported every claim. Nothing exaggerated. Matteo's team claimed the message was personal, that they didn't expect the effects, and that people misinterpreted. But no one in that courtroom thought nearly 30,000 shares were a misunderstanding. I kept my head down as the judge read the summary judgment. No need to visit Matteo. I listened calmly as the words came out. The defendant, Matteo Walker, is found liable for significant commercial damages, and is ordered to compensate the plaintiff, Henry Walker, for direct losses totaling $248,000. Silence followed the verdict. I rose. Matteo wasn't looked at. They weren't there, so I didn't look for their reaction. I left the courtroom after putting a period at the end of a long, odd sentence that didn't need to be written. I triumphed. Not to teach anyone, but because I stopped slacking. After the litigation, I heard Matteo had to sell the company, once termed the family legacy, and his house to pay me $248,000. Not asking for information. I didn't investigate. I didn't question his method. I didn't care anymore. I only needed to know that they ignored my warning. They selected that road, so they paid the price. The next 6 months were peaceful. But 3 days ago, early in the morning, it all came back in a familiar way. It was Saturday. My doorbell rang at 7 a.m., the same time they asked for $120,000. The sky was dismal. After opening the door, I was astonished to see my mother. Her eyes crimson, face sunken, hand grasping her bag strap, like it was the only thing preventing her from breaking apart. First, she was silent. Her voice was tiny and husky as she said, "Your father. He's in the hospital. It's serious this time. The treatment is estimated to cost close to $20,000. I know I was wrong, but please, just this once, help me." Stood still. I wasn't angry then. My pity was absent. Just a sense of emptiness in my chest, one I'd experienced too often when I realized I was in the same circle again. I lingered on her. I whispered, more like an exhalation. "To me, my parents died the day both of you let Matteo destroy my career and said nothing. And I don't give money to the dead." She froze. I didn't weep. No more pleading. Standing there with twitching lips, she seemed to want to say something but couldn't. I didn't delay. I breathed deeply and said clearly, "Ask your heir." I carefully closed the door to let her know it wouldn't open again. Some of you may believe I'm nasty, cold-hearted, or unforgiving by now. If that's what you're thinking, don't judge me right away. In fact, I went to the hospital that afternoon after my mother left. I avoided my father's room. I didn't stand by the window like in the movies. I called the information desk with his name and requested an update. I went there to confirm her truthfulness. Indeed she had. She was right. My father was hospitalized and his treatment cost about $20,000. My documents were in front of me. I nearly took out my credit card. However, my mind immediately returned to Easter 1 year earlier, when they lifted their glasses, publicly handed everything over to Matteo, and implored me to understand. I called a couple people the next morning, still confused from the day before. I checked that my parents owned their house with real estate contacts. It wasn't mortgaged. It wasn't transferred. It's worth about $400,000. They may readily sell such assets to pay medical expenditures. I didn't pay hospital expenses. I wrote my mother one message. You still have the house. Sell it to pay for Dad's treatment. She didn't reply. She may have hesitated out of attachment, or because that house was always meant for Mateo. Maybe she couldn't believe I wouldn't intervene again. No matter her excuse, I don't care. They decide whether to sell or keep it. I've made my own. I won't return. After everything, I don't expect anything from my family. I still believe in family. Now I know. Family isn't always where you're born. Sometimes you choose to belong. I thought they'd appreciate my effort and sacrifice if I tried hard enough. However, some people only appreciate what you've given when you're done. I don't want this story to anger or sadden anyone. I'm posting it because I think someone is listening. Someone is in my shoes. Expected to carry. Expected comprehension. Only because they did better, are they expected to constantly be strong. I'll say one thing to you. You're not horrible for declining. You're not selfish for refusing repeated abuse. Sometimes kindness needs limits. Sometimes one-sided love must be let go if you're the only one clinging on. Before I finish, I want to ask you, the ones who've stayed and listened to the end. Was I wrong to leave a family that had repeatedly treated me like a backup plan and abandoned me when I had nothing to give? Was I overly harsh for refusing to help someone who had rejected me, especially when I needed them most? Thanks for watching and diving into this wild family drama with me. If you love Reddit family drama, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. He called me, his servant, in front of everyone, so I moved out without a word. Now he's broke, and his mom calls me nonstop. Hello, my name is Serena. I'm 27 years old and female. Plus, Albert, 28, my boyfriend of nearly 2 years, if you can call it that. And I had been living together for about 13 months. It isn't a charming oh my god, we moved in for love situation. It was mainly practical. His lease was up, and my apartment was falling apart. And not gonna lie, I thought it would be fun at first, and it was, until it was not. I'll go back to that. So this weekend, we were invited to this party. They weren't even our buddies. Claire, our landlord's daughter, said, "Hey, you guys are always super chill with the rent stuff, come hang." I had only met Claire once in person. She prefers group messages for rent reminders over face-to-face interactions. Albert, on the other hand, is all for it, claiming that it will help him network. For what? No idea. He always says that regarding unrelated situations. For example, "Bro, you're not running for office." Anyway, I basically said yes, because I hadn't been out in weeks, and figured there'd be free munchies, and if it became boring, I could leave early. We arrive, and it's more fancier than I expected. Not wealthy fancy, but there is actual glassware, and someone is already playing a Spotify playlist on a Bluetooth speaker that does not sound like it was thrown in a toilet, which is unusual for these scenarios. However, there is an odd atmosphere that comes across immediately. Claire is wearing an expensive-looking velvet top, and everyone seems to know each other except for us. And Albert acts like he's on, I don't know, maybe a talk show or anything. He's all handsy, laughing too loudly, and nudging me as if he wants me to work the room with him. I'm only there for the chips. At first, I'm simply meandering about, telling Claire about how bad our shower pressure is, and how the dryer occasionally makes strange noises. And I notice Albert is already sipping quickly, with the second cup in his hand by the time I complete the first. I make a joke about him working hard on a Saturday, and he simply shrugs and says something about needing to relax after a week of dealing with my nagging. Not even a smile. I'm not sure, but it stung, so I just brushed it off, right? He's always had a caustic response, but lately it's become more direct. I know I might be a little overbearing at times, but if I don't remind him about payments, guess who gets the angry text from Claire? Spoiler. It's not him. So around 30-ish minutes in, I realize I'm basically following him around and cleaning up after him. And he's simply chatting to two individuals I don't recognize. And I heard him say something like, "Oh, Serena's super helpful. Couldn't keep my place clean if she wasn't around." But his tone isn't complimentary. It's as if he is laughing at me. I try to brush it off again, but then he starts ranting about how he never has to worry about rent being late because someone is effectively his accountant and maid. The boys chuckle but aren't sure if it's humorous. I give him this look, and he simply winks at me. I go into the kitchen to fetch another drink, but now I'm upset. Here's where things get worse. I suppose I should clarify that Albert has always been one of those individuals who jokes but is truly cruel. For example, if I call him out, he would say, "Lighten up. It's just a joke. Why are you so sensitive?" But it's always about something I do for him or forget. And he never let it go. He'll remind me of the time I mistakenly shrunk his hoodie like it was a running gag. But if I bring up his story, it's old news. So sure, I spent the entire night watching him become drunk. And I'm texting my friend Avery beneath the table like, "Pause, distract me before I throw a chip at his head." By the time it's maybe 11 p.m., most people are pretty tipsy, but Albert is clearly gone. I try to encourage him to drink some water. He ignores me and begins to speak louder, as if he is performing for the room. Claire comes up and sits next to me, quietly asking, "Is he always like this?" I simply shrug. She appears uneasy. I simply say, "He's had a rough week," which is the most ridiculous excuse. His week was not bad. He left his laundry in the washer and now everything smells like mildew. That is on him. So, at some point, someone brings up living with partners and the hardest tasks. Albert decides it's time to shine. He rises up, raises his drink as if toasting, and says, "Oh, you want to know what it's like to live with Serena? She's basically my maid with benefits. Good for scrubbing toilets and paying rent, but way too boring for anything else." Yes, he actually shouted that aloud to the entire group. And everybody just freezes. Claire's face is like, "Did he just say that?" A couple of his pals laugh, but largely it's the awkward, "Oh God, please don't drag me into this" laugh. I just stood up. I'm not loud or anything. I just started heading down the hall. "Albert," this guy physically grabs my wrist. It wasn't too hard, but it was enough to put me off. And he does this thing where he's like, "Oh look, she's going to leave. Sit down, Serena, come on." And he turns to the group, shaking my handbag in the air and says, "Look guys, she doesn't even have the guts to walk away. Pathetic, isn't she?" People truly laugh. Like, not all of them, but enough to make my face hot. Claire is simply staring at the floor. I pull my wrist away. He doesn't let go at first, but I pull it. I'm not going to lie. It wasn't gentle. And I simply stand there for a moment, unsure what to do, because I don't want to make things weirder. But I'm not going to cry in front of these folks. So I sat back down. I take my purse from his grasp and simply place it on my lap. He's still standing there, trying to garner more chuckles, but it's losing steam. For the following hour, I scarcely moved. I scroll through my phone, pretending to text, but all I'm doing is staring at my lock screen. I'm thinking of all the times I took up his slack, covered for his late payments with Claire, and did his dishes when he forgot. And I feel like a complete idiot because this is the person who, when we first started dating, would bring me coffee in bed, and tell how much he loved me. Now I'm merely the target of his maid jokes. Eventually, a couple of individuals approach me and clumsily inquire about my well-being. I just claim I am all right. I am just weary. Claire sits next to me and gently says, "You don't have to stay." But I just shake my head because I don't want to raise a scene. Plus, Albert is still lingering around the door, as if he is defending it. He's resting against the wall, scrolling through his phone, and I see him type something on Instagram. I know he's probably messaging his group chat about how nuts I am. I really want to leave, but every time I rise up he gets in the way. Claire tries to go past him to let her dog out, but he ignores her and blocks the hallway until she actually pushes him out of the way. He slips a little, nearly drops his phone, and gets angry at her for shoving, but she simply instructs him to move. I see all of this and think, okay, so it's not just me. He's just like this, I guess. He has to be the center of attention at all times, and if he feels ignored, he brings everyone down with him. It's very evident. Now that I'm paying attention, my phone keeps buzzing all night. I receive texts from Avery wondering if I'm okay, and I just answer, "It's fine, I'll call her later." I also got a couple of texts from my mother, which is strange because she never texts this late, but she's asking if I'll come by tomorrow. I almost respond only to have an excuse to go, but I don't want to start something in front of these folks. I know if I go, he'll make a fuss. So I'm simply waiting. Finally, it's approximately 2 a.m. and many are leaving. I get up, take my coat and start towards the door. Albert stands there, arms folded, and just stares at me. I do not say anything. I just walked past him. He mutters something beneath his breath. I couldn't tell what it was. Probably more of the same. I step outside and stand on the porch for a minute, trying to regain my breath. Claire comes out to hand me my charger. I left it plugged in. She glances at me as if she's about to say something, but she does not. Just instruct me to text her about the dryer if things become worse. I nod, thank her, and then go. The walk home took about 10 minutes, and I spent the entire time replaying everything in my thoughts. I get to our apartment, go directly to bed, and don't say anything to Albert when he eventually enters, slamming the door behind him. He doesn't even glance at me, he simply kicks off his shoes and walks to the bathroom. I lie there going through Reddit, entering stuff into my notes app to ensure I don't forget anything. So that's how my Saturday night went. I'm so angry I'm shaking. I'm not sure what I should do next, but I'm not going to let this slip. If anyone is interested, there will be a second installment. I just had to get this out. I apologize if this is a disaster. I'm still really angry. Update 1. Okay, I didn't expect I'd be back so quickly, but a lot of you requested the next chapter, and typing it down is stopping me from screaming at my phone. Plus, I believe I'm still too upset to do anything else right now. I'm not sure if this is even readable. I'm operating on about 4 hours of sleep and a large iced coffee, which isn't helping my anxieties. Okay, here we go. So I woke up after that disastrous party, checked my phone, and the alerts were crazy. Albert's parents missed 20 calls. His mom sent him texts with messages such as, "Please call us. Are you okay? What's going on with Albert? Can we talk?" He even missed FaceTime with his sister. And gal, I just set my phone to quiet and stared at the ceiling for a while. Couldn't deal. Albert was snoring on the couch, which is unusual because he rarely sleeps there unless he's trying to be theatrical. But I believe he passed out after arriving home. I walked past him to fetch some cereal, and he simply said something and rolled over. Oh, and the kitchen was filthy. For example, last week's Solo cups were still available. The sink was full of his dishes. The counter was sticky from when he attempted to make homemade margaritas and spilled sugar everywhere. It looked like someone had hosted a toddler party there and neglected to clean up. I just stared at it thinking, I'm the only one who ever does any of this. Every single time. I can't recall the last time he took out the garbage without being reminded. He always claims he's just lousy at seeing messes, but he notices when I miss a spot. I sat with my coffee, trying to figure out what to do. I could just leave. I may text Claire and inform her that he is now responsible for the rent. I could pack my belongings and stay with my mother or Avery for a few days. But really, I want him to feel it. I want him to have to deal with the mess he's created, both physically and figuratively. I want him to understand how much I care, since he doesn't. He never has. And after last night, I'm not in the mood to become a bigger person. I'm petty, but proud. So I started building a list, literally on my notes app. Everything I paid for. Every time, I paid his portion of the rent. Every bill I put up. Every cleaning supply I purchased. Every weird item he forgot in the shop, I just picked up. The list is long. I scrolled for a whole minute simply looking at the minor details. Toilet paper, paper towels, Swiffer refills, laundry cards, light bulbs, trash bags, that dumb scented candle he enjoys. Literally everything. I even uncovered Venmo receipts from last year, when he couldn't access his account, and I covered his internet usage for 3 months straight. Never repaid me. Just kept saying, I'll get it next time. Correct. The more I went through it, the madder I became. I started photographing things around my apartment. The couch is mine. I bought the TV when I moved in. The plates, silverware, microwave, and linens are literally all mine. Except for the ugly lamp he received from his parents, and the broken kettle that he promises to replace, but never does. I began mentally grouping things together, such as, what can I take without needing a U-Haul? What do I actually care about? What would he even notice is gone? I emailed Avery and asked if I could use her car the following weekend. She just replied with a middle finger emoji and the words, say less. I adore her. I ignored Albert all morning. He walked into the kitchen at midday looking completely dead. He made a huge show of pouring water and massaging his temples. I sat there scrolling through my phone, not trying to be engaged in making him breakfast. He eventually tried to make small talk, stating he couldn't recall anything from the previous night. I just answered, "You said enough." He looked perplexed for a moment, then became defensive, saying, "Oh, come on, you know I was kidding. Everyone jokes like that." I just gazed at him and did not respond. He got furious and returned to the couch. My mother called again and asked if I was coming to supper. She could see something was wrong, but I only replied I wasn't feeling well. I would text her later. She inquired if Albert was coming, and I chuckled. She didn't push, simply told me to call if I needed anything. I should have told her then, but I didn't want to go through the whole, "we warned you about him" speech. Parents never let it go. Albert spent the remainder of the afternoon on his phone, surfing TikTok and texting with his friends. I heard him giggle several times, then he became quite quiet. I looked over and saw he was in a group chat with Carson and Andrew, his two ride-or-die college mates. They were discussing how awkward last night was. Someone said Claire appeared irritated. Albert simply stated, "She'll get over it. She always does." I snapped a screenshot and stored it, just in case. Not for blackmail or anything, just to prove that he knows he's an ass. Around 5 I started packing my belongings. Not everything. Just the little things. My chargers, makeup, favorite hoodie, headphones, novels, and laptop. Things he'd never notice missing. Everything went into my bag and into my car. He didn't even inquire where I was going, he simply told me to bring back some chips if I went by the store. I slammed the door as I exited. I sat in the car for a minute, inhaling, before driving to Avery's to drop off my stuff. She didn't ask any questions, just offered me a soda and turned on some music. "Girl," I nearly sobbed, but I didn't. When I returned, Albert was on Xbox, shouting at a kid online about camping and Spawn. I entered the bedroom and began looking through the closet. Half of the clothes in there are mine, but he always leaves his belongings in a pile on the floor. I began folding my belongings into a laundry bag. He came in and asked what I was doing. I simply answered, "Laundry." He shrugged and returned to his game. I cooked dinner just for me. He walked in and asked where he was. I informed him that he could make his own. He literally pouted, like a child. I just walked past him and went into my room. I spent the night messaging Claire. I inquired if she was all right after yesterday night, and she answered she was just ashamed of everyone. She apologized for having to deal with Albert, and told me to let her know if I ever needed assistance with the flat. I inquired whether she believed her father would allow Albert to stay if I moved out. She responded, "Well, you're not on the lease, are you?" "Just him." I said, "Yeah, just him. Since when we moved in, he promised to handle the paperwork and never put my name down. I just mentioned it would be less complicated." She added, "Then he's responsible for the rent." I remarked, "Good to know." She responded with a thumbs up emoji. I began to feel slightly better. Next morning, I began relocating more of my belongings. Albert hardly noticed. He was debating with Andrew about fantasy football while moaning about the Wi-Fi. I began unplugging things that were mine and storing them in boxes. I took the router, which I paid for, the coffee maker, the kitchen knives, my blender, my throw pillows, and even the air fryer. I left all of his belongings, his old laptop, his gaming chair, and his mess of miscellaneous wires that he claims he'll arrange someday. I asked Avery to come help me with the heavy items. She arrived at about 2. We loaded her car with boxes. He came out and inquired what we were doing. I said, "Moving some things." He just nodded and went back inside. I left the necessities for the next day: my bed, dresser, and bathroom supplies. I imagined I would return when he was at the gym. He goes every Tuesday at 6 p.m., just like clockwork. Always shares a sweaty mirror selfie on Snapchat. I texted Claire that I'd be out by the weekend. She answered, "Just let me know if there are any problems." I replied that I'd put my keys in the mailbox that night. Albert acted as if nothing was unusual. He asked if I'd want to watch something. I replied, "No thanks." He pouted again. I nearly laughed. He remarked that the kitchen was empty. I responded, "Maybe go to the store." He said, "Why are you being like this?" I said, "You know what you did?" He rolled his eyes and walked away. I shut the restroom door and stayed there for about 20 minutes. My mother called again. I finally responded by informing her that I was moving out. She said, "Oh honey." She didn't seem surprised. She merely asked, "Do you need help moving?" I replied, "Maybe, but Avery has it." She said, "Do you want to stay here for a while?" I said, "Maybe, but I think I'll be fine." She said, "Okay, just let me know." I nearly told her everything, but I didn't. So now comes the good part. The following day, Albert leaves for the gym at 6 a.m. I text Avery. She comes over. We gathered the remainder of my belongings. I place a note on the counter with a list of everything he owes me for the past year. Rent, bills, groceries, cleaning supplies, and so on. As well as a note that says it's your turn to pay. Don't forget the toilets. I placed my keys in the mailbox. I take one more look at the apartment. It appears sad. The energy in the air calls me pathetic. I go away without looking back. I went to Avery's. She gives me a drink, and we spend hours watching silly YouTube videos. My mother texts to say she is proud of me. I did not reply immediately. I just want to be alone for a bit. Later that night I received a series of texts from Albert. He's mad. Says I surprised him. He accuses me of being selfish for leaving him to handle all of the finances. He says he can't believe I would do this to him. I do not reply. He calls me. I ignore it. He calls again and again. I blocked him. I blocked his mother. I blocked his sister. I also block Andrew and Carson, just in case. I text Claire and tell her I'm leaving. She adds, "Thank you for informing me." I inquire whether Albert has paid the rent yet. She answers, "Not yet." I say, "Good luck with that." So, that's where I am at. I'm out. I am gone. And I left him with a disaster that he can't ignore. He always aspired to be the big man, the one in charge, the one who never did anything wrong. He can now figure out how to clean up after himself, both literally and metaphorically. I am not saying I am finished either. If he wants to play games, I can join. But for now, I'm going to let him stew. Perhaps now he will know who is truly sad. Please let me know if you would like any additional updates. I have a hunch this isn't done yet. Update 2. Okay, I'm not going to lie, I didn't expect to be posting again so soon, but folks kept asking for updates. And honestly, things became messier than I thought. I also need a place to vent because if I keep ranting about it in my group chat, Avery will show up at my house with a bottle and a baseball bat. And I'm not sure who she'll hit first, me or Albert. So, shortly after I moved out, I assumed Albert would just ignore me. Maybe attempt to trash talk me in front of his pals and then just deal. But no. He went full drama mode. I'm barely even out of Avery's car when I get the first angry text, followed by another, then another. All capitals too. He claims I set him up, that I'm wrecking his life, and that his parents are panicked because they thought I was missing. And now they're phoning him constantly, asking what happened. Like, buddy, maybe you should have considered that before calling me your maid in a crowded setting. Anyway, I disregard everything since I'm not going to play into his hands. Avery keeps telling me to block him, which I already have, but he starts using different numbers. Send me a direct message on Instagram, then on Facebook, which I haven't checked since last year. I simply leave everything unread. I guess he's hoping I'll come back just to stop him up, but not now. What I didn't foresee was how quickly his financial issues would escalate. Claire texts me around 2 days after I left, wondering if I know when Albert will pay rent. I just gave her a screenshot of his latest, "I'll get it next time" text and stated, "Not my circus anymore." She responded with a bunch of laughing emojis and a yikes. He apparently informed her that I would cover for him if there were any problems, which is ridiculous, considering I literally told her I was leaving. I assume he figured I'd continue running his errands from a distance. The group chat turmoil escalates here. So, Albert and I were in a group chat with a few of his friends. Andrew, Carson, Gabriella, and some of their women. Mostly for silly memes, party invitations, and debating about where to order food. I had been quiet there for a long time. But I decide, you know what? If he's going to attempt to spin this as if I'm the evil person, I'm not going to be quiet. So I send a message, not in fury, but just facts. Hey, since Albert keeps messaging me about abandoning him, here's all the rent receipts. Here's the stuff I paid for. Here's screenshots of his maid with benefits joke and his texts about having me trained. Not trying to start a war, just clearing up the facts. Not gonna lie, that conversation blew up. Two of the guys attempt to defend Albert, claiming that he was just intoxicated and didn't mean it. Gabriella claims she always believed he treated me poorly, and is relieved I finally left. Andrew claims I'm being dramatic, but I simply send a photo of the letter I placed on the counter with the total amount he owes me for the year. Silence for about an hour after that. Carson ultimately texts me privately, asking whether I'm fine, and if I need any assistance moving anything else. I say, I'm fine but thank you. And he simply responds, Albert is having a rough time. I don't respond. Meanwhile, Claire informs me that her father is now involved since Albert failed to pay rent for the first time in his life, and attempted to blame me as well. Which, like, good luck. My name isn't even on the lease. Her father is upset and informs Albert that he has 1 week to pay, or he will leave. I can almost see Albert attempting to argue his way out of it. All phony charm. But it doesn't work this time. In normal life, I'm just trying to keep things moving. I'm at Avery's for a few days, sleeping on her couch, and we're joking about how I should bill Albert for maid services. My mother calls every day to see whether I'm all right, and I keep saying yes, but she keeps offering to bring over groceries or pick me up if I need a break. I finally go over there for supper, and she cooks lasagna without saying, I told you so, which is her idea of a hug. He texts Avery, wondering if she can talk some sense into me. She sends him a simple, don't ever text me again, and then blocks him. I appreciate her for that. He tries Carson, who simply leaves him to read. Andrew attempts to call me, and I let it go to voicemail. He leaves a rambling message about Albert's awful situation, and how everyone makes errors. I've simply erased it. I'm not interested in getting guilted into solving his problems. So, social pressure is actually working. People are not buying his poor me act. Claire claims her father is fed up and ready to start showing the home to potential tenants if Albert fails to pay the rent by Friday. That's about 3 days away. I'm not going to lie, I get a little satisfaction from it. I mean, for more than a year, I've been discreetly handling everything. Cleaning up, paying bills, apologizing to Claire for late payments, and representing him with his parents. He's now on his own to answer for everything, and he's struggling. The finest aspect is that there are actual consequences. Claire's father is not being nasty. He is only conducting business. He adds if Albert does not pay, he must leave. Carson tells me Albert is trying to borrow money from everyone, but no one wants to offer him anything because they all know he won't pay it back. Even Andrew, who is normally his #1 hype man, admits he has bills. Gabriella apologizes for not noticing how he treated me sooner. I just tell her it's fine. I'm all right now. I received a text from Albert's mother from a strange number, as I had blocked her primary one, asking if I would assist Albert out. Just this once for old time's sake. She says he is really suffering and doesn't know how to keep up with things. I simply emailed back, I'm not his maid. She never responds. Oh, and this is petty, but I am not sorry. A few days later I returned to the flat with Claire. She let me in to get the remainder of my belongings, a box of books and my old blender, which Albert never used but insisted on keeping, just in case. He was there, and he tried to argue with me, saying I ruined his life, and that I didn't have to reveal it. I just answered, you did that yourself. He tried to come in my way, staying in the corridor and refusing to move, so I pushed past him. He shut the door behind me. Claire just rolled her eyes and replied, he's not your problem anymore. I gathered my belongings and left. So, I don't know, but I think I'm finally understanding how much of his attitude was based on entitlement. As if he truly believed I'd always cover for him, clean up after him, pay his bills, and laugh at his jokes. He used to say that I was good at keeping things together, but in reality, he didn't want to do anything. And when he was called out, he attempted to make me look like the villain. Now he's stuck. He has only himself to blame. And every time he tries to make me the bad guy, it only backfires. People are beginning to see through the act. Even his parents, who used to contact me for everything. Serena, did you remind Albert to call his grandma? Serena, did Albert find his insurance card? Are learning they can't make me solve it. I am not being mean. Just finished. I'll keep you updated if anything else happens. But, to be honest, I believe this is the beginning of him dealing with his own mess. And if you're reading this and you're the Serena in your relationship, believe me, You don't owe anyone your sanity or credit score. I suppose that's all for now, unless he tries something new, which wouldn't surprise me at all. Update 3. Okay, so this is probably going to be my last update for a bit unless something genuinely crazy occurs. Because not gonna lie, I'm exhausted, and I need to finally get on with my own work. But I promised a last wrap-up, and honestly, this one is lengthy. So, if you're still reading, thank you for your support, DMs, and girl same comments. I'm not used to random online strangers rooting for me, so this is very good. After the last piece, I was largely just waiting to see if Albert would pay his rent or get kicked out. And to be honest, I didn't think he'd go down without one final weak move. I was not mistaken. But first, let me start with the craziest part. His parents. So, the morning after I left for good, I still had 20 missed calls from his mother, father, and even his sister's old phone number. I'm not sure, but I kept ignoring them, and to be honest, it got to the point where I felt pity for not even responding to their texts. Examples include, "I'm alive, leave me alone." But then, around midday my phone starts blowing up again. The same numbers, but with longer voicemails. His mother, frantic, asked me to just talk to her, claiming Albert is in poor form, hasn't eaten, can't sleep, and has never been like this before. I listen to about half a message, roll my eyes, and then delete it. I'm not cold-hearted, but I'm no longer his mediator. I am not his father, therapist, or maid. The next thing, and this is the bit that truly makes me want to flip a table, she begins texting my mother. Like my actual mother. I imagine she still had her phone number from the one time they met at a holiday event. I only discovered it after my mother called and said, is everything okay? Albert's mom says he can't pay rent and he needs you to come back and talk some sense into him." My mother simply sounded tired, as if she expected me to say I was getting back together with him. But I told her straight up, "Nope, I'm done, he's on his own. Please don't answer her anymore." She simply answered, "Okay," and asked if I needed her to bring over groceries. Albert keeps calling. Now he alternates between madness and sadness. Like one moment it's, "You ruined my life," and the next it's, "I'm sorry, come back, I'll change." I ignore every single call. He tries other numbers and even tries to FaceTime me. I block everything. It's really like whack-a-mole. Avery still laughs about it. He suggests I start charging him by the call. Meanwhile, Claire texts me that her father has finally given Albert the official notice. He has to go by Friday if he cannot pay. Apparently he tried to secure an extension by claiming his ex sabotaged him. Claire's father simply stated, "It's not my business. Pay or move." Albert attempts to guilt everyone else. Carson texts me that Albert tried to borrow money from him and claimed I stole his belongings. Nope. I literally grabbed only what was mine and left the rest, including receipts. Gabriella texts me, claiming Albert DM'd her and asked if she could vouch for him if Claire's father inquired about payment history. She gave him a gif of someone laughing, and that changed my night. Andrew is the only individual who does not appear to be taking sides, but that is because he dislikes drama, not because he is neutral. He texts me and says he doesn't want to become involved, which is practically his mantra in life. So by Thursday, Claire texts me that Albert is in complete panic mode. He's behind on everything, rent, internet, and possibly even his weird subscriptions. I still receive emails regarding his previous food box service, which, not my problem. I believe he tried calling Claire's father again, and when that failed, he contacted his mother, who then called me again. This time I picked it up, mainly because I was annoyed. She begins with an entire conversation. "Please, Serena. I know he messed up, but he's so lost without you. He's not good at handling life stuff. You know how he is. I've only just stated, sorry, I'm not part of this anymore. You need to talk to your son, not me." She begins crying briefly, which is embarrassing, and I simply say goodbye, and hang up. I believe Albert treats people this way because he has always gotten away with it. His parents, for example, lavish him with attention. His friends either dismiss it or laugh it off. And I was only the latest person to take up the slack. He gets loud when he's humiliated, jokes when he's nervous, and when that doesn't work, he just waits for someone else to come solve things. I mean, I knew he was lazy, but I never realized how much he relied on people to pick up after him until I stopped doing it. So anyhow, Friday arrives. I'm eating leftover noodles in my new house, which is just a shoebox, but it's mine. When Claire texts me, just a thumbs up, he's gone. Albert apparently did not pay, and did not pack up half of his belongings. Instead, he simply left them. Claire's father indicated he could come get the rest if he wanted, but the locks had been changed, and he no longer lives there. I inquired if he caused a scene. She only claims he cried briefly, slammed the door and fled. I nearly feel awful for a second, but then I recall how he behaved at that party, and I'm simply, nah. I do not. And get this. He tries to show up at my new place. I mean literally knocking on the door. I hear it, and look out the window to see him standing there, his hoodie drawn up and holding a grocery bag. I do not open the door. I text Avery, who is really in the next building over, and she comes out, stands on the sidewalk, and simply stares at him until he departs. He doesn't say anything to her and simply walks away. Avery texts me, "Dude is lost." I block his phone number again, just in case. The next day, I received a note in my mailbox. It's from Albert, handwritten, which is unusual. He only writes when absolutely necessary. It's like 3 paragraphs of apologies, explanations, pleading for a second chance, stating he can't do it alone, that he didn't mean anything, blah blah. He even offers to repay me for everything if I return. I tear it up and discard it, not even bothering to react. So that's all, I suppose. Albert has left. I'm out. Claire's family has already started tidying the apartment for new renters. His folks tried everything. Even called my mother again. She simply ignores them now. Gabriella claims Albert is couch surfing at Andrew's house. But Andrew isn't enjoying it, and will probably force him out soon. Carson is still indifferent, but he emailed me that Albert is considering moving back in with his parents. I'm simply pleased I'm not cleaning up after him anymore. The next time someone deems me dull, I will simply chuckle and move on. Because really, I'd rather be boring and free than be trapped cleaning up after some person who believes he's the main character. So, thanks for reading my insane story. If you're ever in a scenario where you're doing all the work and someone treats you like a helper, don't wait for a major revelation. Simply start packing. You'll be surprised at how quickly the trash clears itself. And no, I did not call his parents back. Not my circus, not my monkeys. If Albert wants to get his life in order, he could start by learning how to wash laundry, or at the very least, how to pay his own dang rent. That's it for now. Maybe next time I'll write about something fun. Thanks for watching and sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed these stories, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next drama-filled episode. My twin slept with my girlfriend got me kicked out at 17. Now my family wants me back. Because I'm in Granddad's will. After 8 years of being abandoned, my family has welcomed me, my wife, 27 females, and my daughter, 1 female, to celebrate Christmas. After receiving contradictory advice from my pals, one of them advised me to publish my predicament here and see what random internet strangers would say. My mother, 52 female, and father, 54 male, have 4 children, and I, 25 male, am the youngest. My siblings are, false names, Michael, 31 male, Sarah, 28 female, and my twin brother Casey, 25 male. Growing up, I was the family's black sheep, and I was aware of this from an early age. My family is full of athletes. My father was a fantastic basketball player at a D2 school. My mother played volleyball. Michael played soccer. Sarah played softball. And Casey was a star running back on the football team. I was never particularly interested in any of those physical sports, preferring archery, which my family referred to as a wimpy sport. My parents were always more concerned with my siblings, and rarely attended my events, to the point where I had to beg them to attend my tournaments. Between the ages of 14 and 16, I participated in around 20 tournaments, while my parents only attended 1. They never neglected me, but they were never emotionally available to me in the same way that my siblings were. As a teenager, I despised that. When I tried to bring this up with them, they constantly called me an attention seeker. However, this was not the reason I was rejected by my family. When I was 15, I started dating Amy, now 25, a female, who was in the same grade as me. After about 6 to 7 months of dating, I introduced her to my parents and siblings, who absolutely liked her. I was young, but I could see a future with her. Almost 2 years later, one of Amy's ex-friends informed me that she had been cheating on me for several months. I had no idea who the guy was at the time, but when I confronted her, she revealed that he was my twin brother. She basically told me that she loved me at first, but her love for my brother outweighed that. Later that day, when I confronted Casey at home, I became upset and sucker punched him, knocking him out. I realized that I shouldn't have gotten aggressive, but years of hatred toward him and the rest of the family just erupted. In exchange for my family not filing charges against me, since I could have been prosecuted as an adult in court, I was transferred to live with my paternal aunt, 48 female, who was estranged from the family and resided in another city about 2 hours away. Since then, I have had no interaction with them. It was difficult at first, but with the help of my aunt and her husband, 48 male, I eventually went past my desire for a relationship with them. I transferred to a different high school, attended a university in my aunt's hometown, and graduated as an electrical engineer. I later met my wife and married her. I considered inviting them to my wedding, but decided against it because I didn't want any controversy. From there, my wife and I bought a house an hour away from my aunt and had a daughter a year ago. My mother and father sent me a Facebook message about a week ago, saying they wanted to reunite over Christmas at their place. I told them that I would think about it, that I could have other plans, but that I would get back to them as soon as possible. Later, both Michael and Sarah sent me friend invitations, which seemed strange to me. My wife has told me that if I opt to travel, she and my daughter would spend Christmas at my father-in-law's place so she does not have to deal with unnecessary stress, especially since she is 2 months pregnant, and I agree with her. My question to people reading this is, should I try to reconcile with my family, or not? I can't decide what to do. On the one hand, they may feel horrible about what they did to me and wish to apologize. However, if I go there, they may try to make me apologize to Casey, which I do not want to do. Any input would be beneficial. Update 1. Hello there, guys. It has been a difficult 2 weeks, but I appreciate everyone's counsel and support. This is going to be a very long post. I intended to post earlier, but several things got in the way. My wife began experiencing excruciating abdominal discomfort 2 days after Christmas, and she was unable to stand on her own 2 feet. My sister-in-law, 30 female, and I rushed her to the hospital, where we discovered that my wife had had a miscarriage, and that the fetus needed to be removed immediately. The worst part for me was telling my wife what had transpired. Due to problems with the operation, my wife was obliged to stay for 2 extra days. I've been trying to be strong for my wife and daughter, but I'm suffering right now. On to the update. Most of you who replied on the same day I posted advised me not to spend Christmas with them due to the significance of the day. I agreed and planned to spend the remainder of the holidays with my wife. They never had time for me, so why should I make time for them? When I texted them this, I expected them to quarrel with me, but they instead replied they respected my views and couldn't wait to see me after the holidays. I started investigating my family to discover why they had contacted me. Michael is a corporate lawyer with a major company in my hometown. Looking at his Facebook page, he has 2 daughters and married his wife in 2016. Sarah appears to have married a doctor. She was studying to be a nurse 8 years ago, and they now have a son together. I have a friend who lives in my hometown and has parents who are friendly with mine. When I asked her about Sarah, she informed me that she divorced her first husband, whom she had been dating for 8 years, after he committed mail fraud. Casey married Amy right after high school, and they had 2 children. I couldn't figure out what he or his wife do for a living on Facebook, but the fact that they bought a large house last year in the midst of a pandemic suggests they aren't truly hurting. My father appears to be experiencing a midlife crisis, and my mother is very active in the wellness community. I then proceeded to enumerate the possible reasons why they wanted to contact me right now. 1. Money. Unlikely, considering 8 years ago, my parents' combined earnings were greater than mine and my wife's. Given that my siblings are not hurting financially, I believe money is not the issue. 2. Organ donation. This could be the case, but it seems improbable. A Redditor suggested that Casey, being my twin, would be my most likely mate. I believe it is doubtful, however, given he was tagged in a Facebook post skiing just a week before Christmas. 3. Regarding my daughter. They could be contacting me to establish a bond with my daughter, but I'm not certain. My daughter is not my parents' first granddaughter, so I'm not sure why they want to meet her. They most likely found out about my daughter because my wife's Facebook account was public. She has since privatized her account. I immediately contacted my aunt, the estranged one who took me in, and informed her of the situation. She explained why they had reached out to me after all this time. To comprehend the circumstances, you must first understand why my aunt was estranged. My paternal grandparents, 79 male and 76 female, had 4 children. My father was the second oldest, while my aunt was the third. After graduation, my aunt came out to her parents as bisexual and started dating her partner. My grandparents promptly rejected her and refused to contact her. However, roughly 4 years ago, my grandfather started to seek out. About a month ago, my grandfather inquired about me, what I was doing in life, and whether I was married or had children. My aunt chastised my grandfather for wanting to know about me after he defended Casey's actions. That's when the entire thing changed. My grandfather informed my aunt that because I had cheated on Amy with one of her close friends, I deserved to be alienated. My grandfather is a devout religious man who despises cheating. My family had told him that when the buddy with whom I supposedly cheated confessed to Amy, she turned to Casey and Sarah for support and consolation. When I learned about this, I confronted and viciously attacked Casey and Sarah. Sarah was the one who tried to tear me and Casey apart. But I never touched her. And I did not brutally attack Casey. When my aunt told me this, my jaw dropped. I couldn't believe they despised me so much that they were willing to fabricate a horrible falsehood about me and disseminate it. My aunt later informed my grandfather the complete truth about what had happened. She told me he was startled since he had always felt Casey was a good kid. My grandfather then asked my aunt for my phone number, which she declined. I understood why my parents and siblings wanted to contact me. My grandfather had told my parents and siblings that if they did not apologize to me and invite me to the family Christmas meal, they would be cut out of his will. For reference, he is a multi-millionaire. So that is why they contacted me. Not to repent for how they had all wronged me in the past, but because if they didn't, they would not receive anything from grandfather. What a greedy group of individuals. After learning about it from my aunt, I decided to block them all. Why should I respond to them at this stage? They're all dead to me. I have a wife to support after what she has gone through, as well as a family who respects me, including my in-laws. However, this is not the end. 3 days after New Year's Eve, I got a call from an unknown number on my work phone. Because of my job, I am accustomed to receiving calls from unknown numbers, and when I answered the phone, I heard my grandfather's voice. He most certainly got my number from my company's website. He apologized for not contacting me for the past 8 years. He apologized for being unable to attend significant events like my graduation, wedding, and daughter's birth. I wasn't really close to him previously, so his cutting me off didn't hurt me. Later in the call, he informed me that he was so upset with the rest of my family that he was removing them from his will and adding me to it. I honestly don't know how to feel about it. The money would be helpful, but I don't want him to use it to force a relationship with my kid. We talked for nearly a half hour. The way the call went made me believe that I could develop a good relationship with my grandfather. But then he said something that truly pissed me off. He expressed disappointment that my daughter had not taken the family name. For context, once I married my wife, the question of what last name to use as a pair arose. For legal reasons, I was unable to change my last name to my wife's last name. But we agreed as a couple that all of our future children would have her surname. At this time, I unloaded on my grandfather. I called him a senile old guy and other harsh things, and I told him never to contact me again. The hubris of this man to say that, after everything I've been through, is something I will not tolerate. He will not use the money from the will to dominate me. Even if I receive the money, I plan to donate it to a local charity. However, given his history of making false promises, this is improbable. These last 2 weeks have been really difficult for me, and I am determined to get through them. My wife has made her Facebook account private, and her in-laws have done the same. I have no idea what they do to try to reach me. Hell, they'd probably pay a private investigator to find me. I think they don't know where I live, but you never know. I've considered getting a restraining order, but because there are lawyers in the family, getting one will be difficult. I didn't have much time to answer any of the questions in my previous post. I'll try my best to answer any inquiries during the next day or two, but after that, I'm done with Reddit for a while. Thank you all for your suggestions, and best wishes for the new year. That concludes the first story. Now let us start with the second one. My ex-girlfriend abandoned me and our daughter for another guy 10 years ago. But she's returned, eager to be a family again after contracting COVID, and realizing she has no one left in her life. My narrative began 16 years ago, when I met Lucy. She was an outstanding girl, intelligent, gorgeous, and funny. The best female I ever met. I felt quite fortunate when we began dating, and after a year, we had a baby. I was living the dream, living with my fiancé, raising our young kid, and having a happy family. I adored Lucy, and after several years, we were finally getting married. Our daughter was the most excited about the wedding since she was going to be a flower girl. Everything seemed wonderful until one day, while I was on my way home, a guy approached me and asked to speak with me. At first, I thought he was trying to sell me something, until he said Lucy. He politely invited me to speak in a private setting. He then requested me to pause everything concerning the wedding, and stand aside since he and Lucy desired to be together. I didn't trust him until he started telling me things about her that I couldn't possibly know. I got home as quickly as I could. I didn't want this to be real, so I told her about it, hoping everything was a mistake. But it wasn't. For the following hour, she told me everything. She'd been cheating on me for the last 2 years. She told me that every time she said she loved me, wanted us to be together, or loved our family, she was lying. How her new boyfriend was younger, stronger, more attractive, and a better lover. She stated that she did not want to be connected to me. She lost her freedom as a mother and did not want to be married. She wanted her freedom back. The final sting came when she said she was glad I finally knew, and that she could now leave. I cried, begged, humiliated myself, and got down on my knees, pleading for another chance to attempt to repair our relationship. But she did not want it. She craved the thrill and excitement that this new guy exuded. The next day, she had left us. I felt shattered, humiliated, and emasculated. But my daughter needs me. She was heartbroken. Her mother had departed, and she felt it was her fault. She heard Lucy say she no longer wanted to be a mother. She needed me, and I had to be strong for her. Fortunately, we had help. My family as well as Lucy's family were quite supportive. Her parents were so ashamed of their daughter's behavior that they couldn't approach me without apologizing for everything she did. I will never be able to repay everyone for their assistance. Fast forward 10 years, and after much time and therapy, my daughter and I are happy. She is the light of my life, a stunning 15-year-old lady whom I adore. Our wounds have healed, and we enjoy a really pleasant existence. But then she returned. When my daughter and I returned home, Lucy was waiting for us outside our apartment, eager to talk. I recognized her right away, and I'd like to say I did something great, like ignore her, ask her to leave, or be rude to her, but no. I am an idiot. My heart skipped a beat as soon as I saw her. She was still as gorgeous as before, but she appeared even better. Perhaps age made her appear mature and elegant. Maybe the clothing or the makeup. I'm not sure. But I allowed her in. While our daughter gave us some space and went to her room, she told me all she had done since leaving. Basically, she lived with that person for several years. She expressed how much she appreciated it, how much fun she had, and how she thought those were the best years of her life. Until she realized that the joy of her new connection was fading. She eventually started cheating on that person as well. She said she wanted to feel alive and excited. Eventually the relationship ended, and she began dating other men. Every relationship lasted less than the one before it, until she was only having casual hookups. She also mentioned that she sometimes thinks about us, our family. She claimed she was too proud to confess she had made a mistake until last year, when she contracted COVID. It hit her so hard that she thought she'd die and understood how alone she was. How dumb she had been. She committed a mistake so long ago. After all of that, she said that she regretted what she had done and stated, and now she was ready to marry me, and be the family we always meant to be. When she was done, I asked her to leave so I could ponder. She agreed, stating she'd be back the next day. For years, I wished she would return. And now it was occurring. But it didn't feel right. Since then, she has paid us practically daily visits, eager to discuss the best years of our relationship, and how we may reunite as a happy family. I begged for support from my family and friends. Most of them told me that if I took her back, I would be making the worst mistake of my life. Others suggested that I give her a chance. It took me a long time to heal, and even longer to begin forming new relationships. And I would risk everything. My daughter and I had a long discussion about it one night. I strive to involve her in every aspect of our lives, and this problem is very important to her. Because it is about her mother. Sometimes she shocks me with her wisdom and maturity, as she informed me, "Can you truly love someone who has damaged us so much?" And that's all I needed. I would never forgive myself if I allowed her to injure my daughter again. I stated it to Lucy. If she wants to be around or have a relationship with our daughter, I'm fine with that. But only if she wants it. But I told her we wouldn't be back. Lucy just stated that she would make me fall in love with her again, and that she would not give up. Update 2. I didn't expect so many responses, so thank you to everyone for your feedback and advice. Thank you to those that opened my eyes and helped me recognize that I still have issues with my ex, and am not over her. Overall, I'm grateful to those who warned me about the dangers of reintroducing my daughter into our lives. I recognize my flaws, but I will not allow her to injure my baby again. So, don't worry, I'm not getting back to her. She had insisted on meeting ever since the post. She wanted to talk. I decided to have one last conversation with her and set my boundaries. We met in a public space. The conversation was long and difficult. I wanted her to be honest, so I informed her that if I caught her telling a lie, I would leave. I questioned if she was truly sorry, or if we were her only alternative. Did she truly love us, or were we simply a consolation prize? Did she come back for love, or because she couldn't find another man? She couldn't answer any of the questions. She only said stuff like this. It is not like that. You have to comprehend me. I am not like this anymore. She insisted on giving her another chance, that we could love and be together again. She never addressed our daughter at any point. Only when I brought it out did she begin to mention her. When I tried to settle that we were over, she grabbed my hand and, as some of you warned me she would do, tried to seduce me, pulling down her top, displaying me her cleavage and saying, "We can locate a place, and I'll do whatever you want with you. I will not turn down anything, to pay you." I didn't recognize the woman. She was not the amazing girl I had met. She was not the mother of my daughter. I had no idea who that woman was. But she wasn't my Lucy. I told her to let me go. That we were done. Please leave me and my kid alone. None of us wanted anything to do with her. We had a lovely life without her. She suddenly became enraged, stating I couldn't leave her. That was not my choice. That she had nothing else. That I couldn't take her daughter. I'm still not sure why. But the last statement triggered me. The following are not my exact words, but they are close to what I stated in that moment. Your daughter? Your daughter? You aren't her mother. You merely gave birth to her. You are not her mother. Tell me, where were you while she was sick? Where were you when she ran a fever? When did she feel terrified at night? When did her first tooth fall out? When did she cry at night because she missed her mother? Were you there on her first day of school? When did she get her first period? When did she have her first boyfriend? When her heart broke for the second time, because her mother had already broken it? What dick were you riding when she needed a mother? You have no right to pretend to be her mother, because you have never acted that way. She attempted to respond, but I could see that she was unable to find the words. I left her. Back at home she texted me, asking for another encounter and another chance. She stated that she loves me and is open to change. But I am done. You, everyone, were correct. She doesn't love me or our daughter. She simply loves herself. Having her in my life would be negative, toxic. I don't need that. I do not need her. My daughter and I are returning to therapy soon. Some of you were correct. I need to concentrate on myself, become stronger, and overcome my feelings for her. Because they are not real. Just a memory of who I imagined she was. Thanks for watching and diving into this wild family drama with me. If you love Reddit family drama, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. My girlfriend used my card to host a $1,200 birthday dinner I wasn't even invited to. I didn't yell, just watched it all fall apart. Irene, 29 female, and I, 32 male, had been dating for almost 2 years. We met at a bar trivia night through mutual friends. She was attractive, self-assured, and had a way of drawing people to her. I went down hard. Irene is employed in IT at a downtown IT company. Entry-level position providing assistance. She often talked about it as if she was in charge of the place, even if the compensation wasn't tremendous. I manage my own little business as a general contractor. I've taken it from nothing to something I'm proud of, but it's not glamorous. It covers all of the expenses and more. Everything was great when we first started dating. On weekends we would explore the city, try out new eateries, and see independent films at the small theater she adored. Looking back though, there were always subtle clues that something wasn't quite right. Little remarks about my attire, subtly humorous remarks about my truck, and the fact that she had never once introduced me to any of her co-workers in the previous 2 years. Since I was in love, I chose to disregard everything. Irene noted that her employer was hosting a large client appreciation party at a high-end hotel in the downtown area, approximately a month ago. She was assisting with the planning, and appeared to be under a lot of pressure to make sure everything went according to plan. One evening, she casually stated, "Jessica from IT is bringing her boyfriend," as she browsed through her phone. "He's a lawyer or something." Without giving it much thought, I said, "Oh, can you bring someone?" I observed her moment of hesitation before she said, "I could come for moral support if you want." I mean, I guess you could come. It's just a bunch of corporate people talking about boring work stuff. Since I was aware that she had been experiencing financial difficulties recently, I volunteered to assist with some of the costs. She had been making hints that she might have to move because her lease had increased. In the end, I paid for her new outfit, $450. Her boss's gift basket, $200. And more party materials. Hardly exactly pocket change, but hardly a fortune either. I cleaned up nicely on the night of the party. Wore my finest outfit, which I kept for meetings with possible high-profile clients. Got a new hairstyle. The process. When I picked her up in my pickup, Irene asked if I remembered the present basket and hardly acknowledged my appearance. I could feel her getting tight next to me when we got to the hotel. She began to move a little ahead of me, putting some distance between us as we made our way through the foyer and into the ballroom. "Maybe you should wait in the bar," she said abruptly. "I need to check on some things first." I said, "I'll just come with you." Although she didn't argue, she appeared irritated and said, "Maybe I can help carry something." I was impressed when we walked into the ballroom. It all looked fantastic. Gourmet appetizers being served, an open bar, and mood lighting. Irene saw some coworkers right away and went over, with me following. A woman wearing a sleek black dress commented, "Irene, everything looks amazing." "Who's this?" A beat too long, there was this pause. Irene interrupted me as I reached out to introduce myself. "This is Alex, my driver for the evening." The words lingered in the atmosphere. Her colleague, who was obviously not convinced that I was a driver, looked perplexed and glanced at my suit. She cocked an eyebrow and said, "Your driver?" "Yeah," Irene said with an overly loud laugh. "He was nice enough to drop me off, but now he's actually heading out." She glanced at me. "Right, Alex." It seemed as though someone had punched me in the stomach. I was her driver after 2 years of dating. I helped her go a few paces away from the group by taking her elbow gently. "What the hell was that about?" I said softly, maintaining a calm voice. She looked over her shoulder to see if anyone was observing as she rolled her eyes. "Look, these are important people. My career is on the line here. You really should just go wait in the car or something." Reminding her, "I helped pay for this party. I bought your dress." She stated it at that moment, staring at me with a look of utter disdain. "You should be grateful I even let you in." Everything became quite evident in that instant. All of those hints, all of those remarks, they weren't only oddities or bad days. This was her true identity. I didn't raise my voice or quarrel, simply gave a nod, replied, "You're right," and turned to leave. After getting my jacket from the coat check, I drove quietly home. Irene had left a dozen missed calls and texts on my phone by the time I arrived at my house. "Where are you? Are you seriously leaving me stranded? Don't be so dramatic. You're embarrassing me." None of them got a response from me. I just opened a beer and switched off my phone. It was as if I had finally woken up from a long dream, and I felt oddly at ease. Irene arrived at my door early the following morning. She had been crying, as seen by the puffiness in her eyes. However, I saw that her makeup was still flawless and constantly prepared for the camera. Irene was that person. She insisted, "What happened last night? You just left me there. I had to get an Uber home." I didn't invite her in, so I leaned against the door frame. "You called me your driver." "It was just a joke." "God, you're so sensitive. Those people are important to my career. I didn't want them to think I was, dating a contractor." She had the grace to appear a little embarrassed when she said, "I finished for her." "That's not what I meant. It's just complicated. Office politics and all that." Then the tears started to fall. That was her forte, crying when instructed to do so. She apologized to me, said that she had been anxious about pleasing her employer, and promised to put things right. She even recommended that the two of us go on a weekend break. Her words, "I love you," touched my face. "You know that, right? Last night was a mistake. I was being stupid." I gave the impression that I believed her. Listened to her justifications and explanations, made her coffee, and invited her inside. She apparently thought we were fine, and left soon after. On the surface, things appeared to be back to normal a few days later. Irene was very loving, always sending me heart-shaped texts and discussing our future. She phoned me a week or so after the party occurred, and she sounded quite excited. "Babe, guess what? My birthday's coming up in a couple of weeks, and I was thinking of hosting a dinner for some colleagues at that new fancy place, Antelli's." "That sounds nice," I responded in a neutral tone. "Yeah, but here's the thing. I'm a little short on cash this month after that party and everything." Knowing the answer, I asked, "You want me to help pay for it?" "Would you? It would mean so much to me. Just my work friends, A chance to network a bit." I saw that she had not extended an invitation to me. "How much are we talking about?" "Probably around $1,200 for the private dining room. They need a card on file." "I can put my card down for you," I replied. "Just let me know when you need it." She cried, "You're the best. I'll come by tomorrow to get it." When she visited the following day, I gave her my credit card. Unaware that it wasn't my typical card, she accepted it with a smile. I said nonchalantly, "So what time should I be there?" Her smile wavered a bit. "Oh, actually it's just going to be work people. Boring shop talk and all that. You wouldn't enjoy it." "Got it," I replied with a sympathetic nod. "No problem." She gave me a short kiss and murmured, "Thanks for understanding," before heading out. "You're the best." I reported the card I had given her as misplaced when I called my credit card company the day of her meal. They issued a fresh one right away, and canceled the old one. I then went to Antelli's wearing my finest suit, which was even nicer than the one I had worn to her work party. I chose to sit in the bar area, which was partially hidden by a decorative partition, but had a nice view of the private dining room, rather than entering through the main entrance. They got there at 7:30. Irene was surrounded by her co-workers and looked lovely in a new dress that I had never seen before. The partygoer who had seen her call me her driver was someone I knew. Additionally, there was a man I didn't recognize who kept touching Irene's little back. She didn't want to leave his touch. She appeared to be leaning into it, in fact. I watched while ordering a scotch. They were raising glasses, toasting, laughing, and taking pictures. Being the focus of attention was exactly what Irene was doing. She looked different here, I noticed. Exuberant and self-assured. Not at all like the frequently whiny girlfriend who worked just as an IT support specialist. The server delivered the check to their table at precisely 9:45. Irene waved down proposals from her co-workers to divide the tab, and I watched with a smug look as she confidently handed over my credit card. The words, "It's my birthday, please. This is my treat," came to me. With the card, the server departed. The minutes passed. Then I saw him come back, bending down to talk to Irene in a low voice. Her expression turned from bewilderment to fear. Presumably checking her banking app, she struggled with her phone. Then she began typing furiously, perhaps messaging me. In my pocket, my phone buzzed. "Alex, something's wrong with your card. It's declining. Call me now." I didn't answer. There was another text. This is serious. I look like an idiot in front of everyone. The bill is over $1,200. I remained silent though. I simply sipped my scotch and observed the scene as it transpired. Irene was now clearly upset, and when she excused herself to her co-workers, her face reddened. I could imagine her experimenting with different wallet cards. Maxed out. She had just complained about her credit card debt last week, so I knew. 5 increasingly frantic texts later, I responded, "Look behind you." I saw her head shoot up in astonishment as she read the message. She then spun around and looked around the room before focusing on me at the bar. Her face was devoid of color. Pulling an envelope out of my jacket pocket, I proceeded quietly toward their private dining room after getting up and paying for my drink. When I walked in, there was an almost ludicrous hush. Irene's horrified eyes grew wide. The woman from the party, and a few others at the table appeared to recognize me. One of them questioned, "Isn't this your driver?" "Irene," I said with a charming smile at the table. "I'm, or was, her 2-year boyfriend." I took a few pictures of us together from the envelope, including ones from holidays, events and trips, and laid them out on the table. "I also happen to be the guy who paid for her dress at your client party, the gift basket for her boss, and who called her driver for my troubles." There was a loud awkward silence. Suddenly, the man who had been caressing Irene's back moved away from her. The woman at the head of the table, her employer, had her eyes narrowed as she stared at the pictures. Irene, her face now scarlet, screamed, "Alex, can we talk about this outside?" "No need," I remarked amicably. "I just came to wish you a happy birthday and let you know that the card was cancelled. Reported lost yesterday." She threw up her attempt at poise and yelled, "You did what?" I straightened up and straightened my suit jacket. "Oh, and to answer your question from 2 weeks ago, no, I'm not grateful you let me in. But I am grateful for the clarity." I looked at the table. "Enjoy the rest of your evening, everyone. The check's all yours, Irene." She grabbed my arm and leaped to her feet. "You can't just leave, at least pay the bill." I glanced at her hand on my arm before turning my attention back to her face. I murmured softly, "Fuck off," and turned to leave. I could hear the mayhem breaking out behind me as I walked away. Irene shouting my name, confused muttering, and someone proposing that they divide the cost. I didn't turn around. The calls and texts continued unabated the following day. Irene took between pleading for my pardon and threatening to ruin my reputation. Her number was blocked by me. She made 2 appearances at my house. The door was not answered by me. From her pals' phones she left heartfelt voicemails. I didn't listen and erased them. In fact, one of her coworkers contacted me on LinkedIn a week later. After her manager found out that Irene had been lying about her function and responsibilities, claiming credit for projects she wasn't involved in, there apparently had been an HR inquiry at work. The man at the restaurant who had been groping her. After the dinner event, a senior developer she had been covertly seeing broke up with her right away. My door was knocked on 2 weeks after the disastrous birthday meal. When I opened it, I saw an elderly couple standing there, appearing uneasy. There was no mistaking the familiarity of Irene's parents. Saying, "Mr. and Mrs. Davis," I was truly taken aback. Only once, while they were in town, had I had the opportunity to meet them. Her father murmured, "Alex," with a distressed expression. "May we come in?" Curious as to why they had come to my door, I opened it for them. The uneasy atmosphere permeated the air as we sat in my living room. When she eventually said, "We wanted to apologize," her mother said. "For Irene's behavior. For everything." Her dad gave a nod. "She's been struggling since that night at the restaurant. Lost her job. Had to move back home with us." I said, "I'm sorry to hear that. And I kind of meant it. I didn't want Irene to endure any hardship in spite of it all. All I wanted was for her to leave my life." With firmness, her mother answered, "No, don't apologize. She did this to herself. We've always known Irene could be materialistic. We probably indulged too much when she was younger." Her dad had a disheartened expression. "We encouraged her to find someone financially stable. Told her to use her looks while she had them. But we never thought she'd go this far." That clarified a few things. I recalled that when her father learned that I had my own company, he used to make jokes about Irene getting a huge fish. Then her father added, "She told us what happened." "Not at first. She came home with some story about you humiliating her. But eventually, we got the truth out of her." An envelope was taken out of her purse by her mother. "She's too ashamed to come herself. But we wanted you to have this." A $925 check and a handwritten letter that said, "For the dress, the gift basket, and everything else," were found inside. "I apologize." I gazed intently at the check. The money wasn't the point. It had never been. "We made her take responsibility," her father clarified. "Made her sell some of her designer stuff to pay you back. Small step. But it's something." I said, "Thank you," and put the check back in the envelope. "I appreciate you coming." She appears to have erased all of her social media profiles in order to concentrate on personal development or something. "I'm doing well in business. I've cautiously resumed dating. I had coffee with a kindergarten teacher last week. She seemed genuinely interested in my responses, and asked insightful questions about my business, after I informed her that I was a contractor. There are times when I remember Irene calling me her driver in the hotel ballroom. Even though it was painful, I now appreciate it. At pivotal occasions, some people reveal their true selves. Others show up as minor, inconspicuous acts of cruelty. In any case, trust someone when they first reveal themselves to you. I only wish I had accepted it sooner. For those who are curious about the credit card situation, the answer is no. She was not able to be charged with fraud. I gave her the card in good faith, and I reported it as lost rather than stolen. In that instance, the bank simply cancels and reissues. Indeed, it was petty to leave her with that bill. But I felt entitled to a little pettiness after being treated like a truck-wielding ATM for 2 years. Thanks for watching and sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed these stories, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next drama-filled episode. My wife and brother had a baby behind my back. When I refused to pay for it, my mom showed up at my job screaming I was ruining everything. About a year ago, my brother contacted me. He wanted to reconnect after years of not speaking. Now you must understand that my brother was always the golden child when we were growing up. He could do no wrong in my parents' eyes, and I was simply present. They weren't blatantly harsh, but I was clearly an afterthought. They made certain he received the best attention, everything. That's probably why I left home when I was 18 and haven't looked back. For years we didn't talk much. I was doing my own thing, getting a decent career, getting married, and attempting to establish a life for myself. But then, last year, my brother messaged me, claiming he and our parents missed me, and wanted to make things right. I'm not sure why I agreed to it. But I did. I wondered if people change. Perhaps they genuinely wanted to repair things. So I allowed my brother back into my life. At first everything seemed fine. He started coming around more frequently, and I introduced him to my wife. They got along fine, or so I thought. But after a few months, I began to notice things that did not sit well with me. My brother began visiting more frequently, sometimes even while I wasn't home. My wife would dismiss it, saying they were just hanging out, but I couldn't get over the strange feeling I felt. Then, approximately 4 months ago, my wife broke the momentous news. She was pregnant. At first I was overjoyed. We were married, and I felt we were happy, so I assumed the baby was mine. But something seemed odd. My brother's visits grew, and every time I saw him with my wife, there was a tension I couldn't shake. He'd make jokes about the baby, touch her stomach, and say strange things that made me feel uncomfortable. I tried convincing myself that I was overthinking it. I wanted to trust my wife, but the more I thought about it, the more it didn't make sense. One night after she went to bed, I couldn't handle it. I snatched her phone while she was asleep, and began browsing through her messages. And there it was. The proof I didn't want to find. She had been cheating on me with my brother for months. And the baby wasn't even mine. It belonged to him. I felt nauseous. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the computer and trying to make sense of it. Finally, I woke her up and addressed her. She tried to deny it at first, but as I showed her the messages, she couldn't lie longer. She admitted everything. She had been sleeping with my brother behind my back. And they intended to tell me about the affair when the kid was born. I could not believe it. I just packed my stuff and departed. The next day I called my parents to tell them what had happened, hoping that for once, they would have my back. But no, they sided with my brother. They told me that he had made a mistake, that I should be the larger person, and that I needed to forgive him for the sake of my family. I could not believe it. My own family, whom I'd been separated from for years, was suddenly urging me to forgive the same man who had destroyed my marriage. That's when I determined I was finished with them all. I informed my parents I didn't want anything to do with them or my brother, so I filed for divorce. I assumed that would be the end of it. But things didn't finish there. Throughout the divorce proceedings, my ex tried to take everything I had. She and my brother made up this scenario that portrayed me as dominating and nasty. Of course, my family backed them up. It was as if I was the villain in this twisted version of reality, with them as the victims and me as the bad guy. In the end, she walked away with a significant portion of my money, but I was able to keep the house, which was a tiny victory. So now I'm divorced, shut off from my family, and attempting to pick up the pieces of my life. It's been 2 months since everything exploded, and I'm still trying to figure out how to move forward. I'm working harder and trying to focus on myself, but it's not easy. Every now and then, something reminds me of what happened, and everything comes flooding back. But you know what? I'm finished with them. My brother, my ex, and my parents may have each other. I do not need them. I've spent my entire life as the second choice, the one who is overlooked, and I'm not going to let it happen anymore. I'm not sure what the future holds, but one thing is certain. I will never let them back into my life again. Okay. So this is where things got worse, if you can believe it. When I left my ex and decided to cut relations with my family, I assumed they would allow me to move on in peace. I mean, I didn't have anything else to do with them, right? My wife cheated on me with my brother, my parents supported him, and I was done with all of them. No, it wasn't as simple. About a month after the divorce, my mother phoned me unexpectedly. Keep in mind that I hadn't spoken to her since the day I left, when she effectively ordered me to forgive my brother for ruining my life. I wasn't in the mood to talk, but she called repeatedly. I finally picked up just to find out what she wanted. She immediately launches into a guilt trip speech about how family is family, and that we should all remain together regardless of what happens. She claims my brother is severely struggling, that he has been having trouble finding work, and that now that they have a kid, they are really strapped for cash. She claims they've been relying on the settlement my ex-wife received in the divorce, but it's running out and they require additional assistance. Then she delivers the bombshell. She asks me to assist them out. Yeah, you read that correctly. The same family who threw me under the bus when my wife cheated on me with my brother was now asking for money to maintain themselves. I swear I nearly laughed when she said that. I was like, are you serious right now? You're asking me to help the guy who slept with my wife? You want me to pay for their mess? But she just kept going on about how they're struggling, how it's not fair to the baby, and how I should be the larger person. I could not believe it. After everything they had put me through, they had the audacity to approach me for assistance. I told my mother no, straight up no. I was not going to pay them a penny. I told her they could figure it out on their own, as I had to after they all turned their backs on me. But she wouldn't have it. She began crying, stating how I was being selfish, how I wasn't thinking about the kid, and how my brother was truly remorseful and only needed a second chance. She attempted to make me feel awful for not assisting them, but I wasn't buying it. I informed her that this was their problem, not mine, and that I was not going to become involved. I hung up the phone, assuming that was the end of it. But no. A few days later, my brother arrived at my residence. I'm not sure how he found out where I lived, but he was there at my door as if nothing had happened. I didn't want to let him in, but he wouldn't leave, so I decided to hear him out simply to get him to leave. He begins by apologizing, admitting that he made a mistake and that none of this was his intention. He claims that he and my ex did not intend for things to escalate to this point, and he did not anticipate that it would cause me such pain. I just stared at him, wondering if he truly believed everything he was saying. How could he not believe it would hurt me? He snatched my wife and my chance to start a family, and now he's standing here like it was all an accident. Then he strikes me with this. He's been having difficulties finding work since the affair was out, and now that they have a baby, they're really struggling. He says he knows I'm good at my profession, and was hoping I could assist him out until he gets back on his feet. I wasn't sure whether to laugh or punch him in the face. Seriously? This guy sleeps with my wife, makes her pregnant, And now he wants me to give him money? I stood there for a minute, unsure what to say. I finally told him to get lost. I informed him that he and my ex had created their bed, and now they had to lie in it. I was not going to bail them out, and I certainly wasn't going to give him any money. He tried to argue that I was immature and harboring a grudge, but I was having none of it. I told him that he was lucky I didn't knock him out right then. That's when the situation changed. My brother, who is normally smug and pompous, suddenly becomes enraged. He starts ranting at me, claiming how I've always been jealous of him and angry because his parents treated him better. He claims that I am just reluctant to help, because I am still upset that my ex chose him over me. I'm just staring at him, astonished. This guy believes he's the victim in all of this. He keeps saying that it's not fair that I won't help out, that he has a child now, and that I should let go of the past. He even had the gall to tell me that I should be thankful he intervened because my ex no longer loved me. That was it for me. I told him to leave before I called the cops. I wasn't going to stand there and let him say that to my face as if I hadn't already lost everything due to him. He eventually departed, but not before making one final stab at me, saying that I'd regret not helping him, that one day I'd need something from him, and he wouldn't be there. I laughed in his face, telling him I'd rather live on the streets than beg him for anything. After that, I hoped they would finally leave me alone. Of course, that was wishful thinking. About a week later, my father phones me. Now, I hadn't spoken to my father since the divorce, and I assumed he was calling to do the same thing my mother and brother had tried: guilt me into assisting them. And I was correct. He begins off calmly, asking how I am, and acting as if everything is normal. I was not in the mood for small talk, so I interrupted him and asked what he needed. He gives this long spiel about how I'm the only one in the family that is doing well right now, and how my brother and ex are going through a difficult period. He argues that as a family, we need to support each other, and that I should assist them because they have a baby to think about. I told him straight up, no. I wasn't going to help them, and I didn't care about their situation. He tried to claim that I was being selfish and wasn't thinking about the wider picture. He told me that if I didn't help now, I'd regret it later, because family is what matters most in the end. But you know what? I've been through enough to know that is not true. Family isn't always defined by who shares your blood. It is the ones who support you while others turn their backs. And my family. They turned their backs on me the moment they decided that my brother's happiness came before mine. So I told my father the same thing I had told my mother and brother. I was done. I didn't want anything to do with them, and I wasn't going to be their safety net anymore. I hung up, blocked their numbers, and have not looked back since. Okay. So this is where things got from terrible to utterly absurd. After informing my father I was done and blocking their phone numbers, I assumed that was it. How many times can they come back and ask for money, right? Turns out I was completely wrong. Because they weren't finished yet. My ex-wife was the second person to reach out to me. Yeah, the same woman that cheated on me with my brother, became pregnant with his child, and had the audacity to believe I would still heed what she had to say. It began with a random text from her. She wrote, "I know you don't want to talk, but I really need to explain things." I didn't react. What was there to explain? She screwed me over, and that was it. However, it appears that ignoring her did not convey the intended message. So, a few days later, I received a call from an unknown number. I picked it up, and guess who it was? Yes, my ex. I was about to hang up when she began crying, stating she didn't know who else to turn to. She's talking about how things with my brother are falling apart, how he's been out of job, and how they can barely afford to pay their expenses. And then she hits me with the whole, "You have to help for the sake of the baby" thing. Seriously, why would I aid them after all this? I told her flatly, no. Not my problem. You made your bed, now lie in it. But she simply kept talking. She admitted that she made a mistake, but she expected me to understand because we had been married once, which should count for something. She even tried to use the "remember all the good times we had" card to make me forget how she ended our marriage by hooking up with my own brother. Here is the thing. I wasn't even furious with her anymore. By this point, I was simply tired. I am tired of her. I am tired of my brother. Tired of my entire family acting as if I owed them something after all of their misbehavior. So I told her straight up, "I don't owe you anything. You're with my brother now, and he's your problem, not mine. That's when she became desperate. She started asking things like, "What about the baby? Don't you care about him? He could have been yours." That one hurt a little, I'll admit. I mean, I've always wanted children, and for a moment, I believed I was going to be a father. But then I remembered. The baby is not mine. And to be honest, that is no longer my responsibility. I advised her, "Look, the baby isn't mine, and it's not my job to take care of him or you. You've got a whole family who took your side, remember? Go ask them for help." And I called it quits. After that, I believed they'd take the hint and leave me alone. Spoiler alert. They didn't. A few days later, I'm at work, trying to get through the day, when my manager approaches my desk. He seemed uneasy, which is strange considering we typically get along very well. He says, "Hey man, there's someone here to see you." I think, who the hell would come to my job? So I walk out into the foyer, and guess who is standing there? My freaking mother. I'm almost done with all of this. Who shows up at someone's office unannounced? When I walk into the lobby, she immediately begins to focus on me. She asks, "Why are you ignoring us? We're family, and family doesn't abandon each other." I tell her I'm not abandoning anyone. I was done with their crap, but she wouldn't have it. She begins sobbing in front of everyone in the lobby about how I am punishing the entire family for a single error. She claims, my brother is in a really bad place right now, and that they're all struggling because of me. I looked her full in the eye and told her, "You're not struggling because of me. You're struggling because you chose to side with my brother after he destroyed my marriage. That's on you, not me." She went on to add that they had no idea things would turn out this way, and that all they wanted to do was set things right. But I didn't believe it for a second. I told her I wasn't going to argue with her in the middle of my job, and if she needed to chat, she could call me if I decided to unblock her phone number. That effectively silenced her. She gave me a long lecture about how I was better than this, and how she taught me to be more forgiving. I nearly laughed. Raise me? The same parents who spent my childhood elevating my brother and treating me as if I didn't exist? Okay, I understand. I informed her that if she didn't go, I'd have security accompany her outside. That's when she completely lost it. She began yelling at me, calling me selfish and stating that I was letting my pride stand in the way of assisting my family. I just stood there, finished with the entire affair. Finally, she stormed out, still ranting about how I was going to regret it. I returned to my desk, and my supervisor just looked at me like, "What the hell was that about?" I didn't bother explaining. What can I say? Sorry, my mom showed up to guilt trip me into giving money to the brother who cheated on my wife? That would be nicely received. I simply told him it was a family drama, and left it at that. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, trying to concentrate on work, but all I could think about was how my family had progressed from screwing me over to outright harassment. They were now showing up at my employment. What happens next? Are they camped out in front of my apartment? That night, I decided that was enough. I sent one last message to my mother, father, brother, and even my ex-wife. I said to them all the same thing. Don't contact me again. I'm done with this family, and I don't want anything to do with you. Stop harassing me, or I'll get a restraining order. Harsh perhaps. But I was over it. I'd already lost my marriage, my future goals, and all hope of a regular relationship with my family. I wasn't about to let them continue to tear me down. And you know what? For the first time in months, I felt a sense of calm after sending those notes. It felt like I had finally taken control of my own life, even if it meant alienating the people who were supposed to care the most about me. And I honestly don't regret it. Not a bit. Let's see whether they'll leave me alone this time. But something tells me this isn't over. After sending that final message begging my family to leave me alone, I hoped, just maybe, that I'd finally find peace. How many times do you have to tell folks to back off before they get the message, right? Well, it turns out that my family doesn't understand boundaries. Because my father arrived at my flat less than a week later. Yeah. No text, no call. Just standing at my door as if nothing was wrong. I open the door, and there he is, acting casually as if he's just stopping over for a visit. He gives me that fake smile he always does when he wants anything out of me, and I know this isn't going to be a pleasant visit. He begins, Son, we need to talk. I'm already annoyed because, really, what now? Hasn't everyone done enough? I stepped outside, slammed the door behind me, and ordered him to hurry. I wasn't in the mood for more guilt trips or asking for money. He gets right into it. No warm-up this time, just straight to the point. He continues, your brother and your mother are struggling. Things aren't looking good, and they really need help. You're doing well for yourself now, aren't you? You could easily lend a hand. I could not believe it. After all, this was still their top priority. Ensuring my brother's safety, while I was ignored as if I didn't exist. I cut him off right then and informed him, I'm not giving them money, I'm not helping them, and I'm done with this conversation. But he wasn't finished. He kept pushing, stating that family supports family, that they were all going through a difficult time, and that I needed to step up. Step up. The boldness of that suddenly struck me like a stone. I've worked hard my entire life, but they've treated me like nothing. I said straight to him, you've never stepped up for me. Not once. When my wife was cheating on me with my brother, where were you? When I needed you, you were on their side, not mine. So don't come here asking me to step up now. He stood there for a second, as if he didn't expect me to push back. He then attempted to play the guilt card, of course. He went on. I know we've made mistakes, but we're still your family. We'll always be your family. It's as if they believe that simply using the word family will erase all of the pain they've caused me. I was done playing nice. I said to him, family? You're not my family anymore. Not after everything you've done. You threw me away for him, and now you expect me to save you? Oh no. That's not how it works. He became defensive, stating I was being dramatic and needed to stop carrying grudges. He stated my brother made a mistake, but I overreacted by shutting everyone off. That word, overreacting, set me off. I responded, you think I'm overreacting? My wife slept with my brother. The child she's raising should have been my kid. You all stood by and watched it happen, then asked me to forgive him like nothing ever happened. And now you have the nerve to come here and ask me to help you? That's not overreacting. That's setting boundaries. He was visibly upset, but he was attempting to remain composed. He clarified. We didn't know things would turn out like this. We just wanted to keep the peace in the family. I couldn't believe what I heard. Keep the peace? How is allowing my brother to destroy my marriage keeping the peace? However, it was really typical of them. They've always attempted to sweep things under the rug, pretending nothing is wrong, and expecting me to just go along with it. I informed him. Keeping the peace is just code for ignoring the real problem. You've been ignoring me my whole life, pretending everything's fine as long as my brother's happy. Well, I'm not ignoring it anymore. I'm done. And with that, I turned and began heading back to my door. But of course, he wasn't finished. He grabbed my arm, which was a horrible decision on his behalf. I jerked my arm away saying, don't touch me. He glanced at me as if he did not recognize the person standing in front of him. I think he truly thought I'd cave, like I used to when I was younger. But I'm not that kid anymore. And I wasn't about to be manipulated into giving them what they wanted. Before he went, he attempted one final guilt trip. He went on. You'll regret this one day. You'll see that family is all that matters. I stared him dead in the eye and answered, no. Respect is what matters. And I haven't received any from you or anyone else in this family, so I won't regret this. He stood there for a moment, as if he was going to say something, but he simply shook his head and went away. When I came back inside, I sat down and tried to comprehend everything. No matter what I did, they couldn't understand that I wasn't going to be a part of their mess anymore. They couldn't take the fact that I wasn't following their rules, and it drove them mad. Part of me hoped that after all this time, they'd recognize how horribly they'd messed up. Perhaps they would apologize or acknowledge the harm they caused. But that was simply wishful thinking. They don't realize what they did wrong. They never will. In their minds, I am the bad guy for going away. I am the one who is breaking up the family. But, you know what? I'm fine with that. If standing up for myself makes me the bad guy in their story, that's okay. I'll be the bad guy. I'm not going to let them guilt me into becoming their doormat again. After my father went, I blocked him too. I did not want to cope with any more unexpected visits or phone calls. I knew they'd keep trying, but at least for now, I could relax. Or so I thought. The phone rang again. This time, the number was unknown. I let it go to voicemail, assuming it was just another attempt to reach me. But when I reviewed the message later, I discovered it was not from my family at all, but from a lawyer. My ex-wife tried to sue me for further alimony. That was the last straw. I'm not the same person I was when it all began. I've learned that sometimes you need to fight back. So now I'm preparing for the legal battle. I've been through hell, and if they want to keep pushing, I'll push back. This time they won't win. I'm done being the one that is stepped on. After receiving a voicemail from the lawyer stating that my ex-wife was attempting to obtain further alimony from me, I felt it was time to fight back. I wasn't going to let her or my family drag me through the mud anymore. That was enough. First things first, I contacted my lawyer. I told him everything that had been going on, from my ex attempting to acquire more money to my family bothering me constantly. He was as fed up as I was, and he insisted that we put an end to this once and for all. So we began working on a case. It turns out she didn't have much of a leg to stand on. She was already receiving a nice settlement from the divorce, so there was no reason for her to ask for more. But you know how some people are. They'll keep pushing until they get their way, or until someone stops them. I determined I wouldn't allow her to walk all over me anymore. And I wasn't going to allow my family to continue influencing me. My lawyer and I prepared a strong defense. We even discovered certain loopholes that could get me out of paying alimony entirely. That's when things became interesting. A few days before the court date, my brother, yes, him again, decided to contact me. This time he sent me a lengthy email, attempting to play the big brother role. It was all about how he regretted the outcome, and missed having me in his life. I could almost hear his phony earnestness in the words. He even attempted to explain that the affair was not what it appeared. That it was a mistake, and that they did not intend to upset me. Yeah, sure. A mistake that lasted months and resulted in a child, right? I did not react to the email because, well, what was the point? I knew he was only reaching out because he and my ex were afraid they would lose the alimony, and they were probably hoping to guilt trip me into giving up. But I wasn't going to let that happen. I was finished with them. They had a chance to fix things, and they botched it, repeatedly. So the court date finally arrives, and I'm prepared. My lawyer has everything organized, and we're going in prepared for whatever they throw at us. My ex and her lawyer arrive, and surprise, surprise, she has my brother with her for backup. I wasn't surprised, but it was still upsetting to see them together, like they weren't the ones who ruined my life. They didn't even have the courtesy to appear ashamed or embarrassed about it. They just sat there whispering to each other, appearing to be the victims in all of this. When it was eventually our turn to present the case, my lawyer spelled everything out. He mentioned that my ex was already receiving more than enough from the divorce settlement, and that she was not entitled to more money simply because things were not going well for her. He further pointed out that she had been dishonest during the divorce proceedings, concealing the fact that she and my brother had been dating for months before the divorce was finalized. Basically, we made it apparent that she did not deserve any further money from me. Her lawyer attempted to explain that she needed more money to support the baby, not my child, but it fell flat. My lawyer shut that down quickly. He stated it wasn't my obligation to care for their child, and the judge appeared to agree. What is the best part? My lawyer had also accumulated proof of my family's harassment over the previous 3 months, including texts, unannounced visits, and my mother showing up at my employment. He offered it to the judge as evidence that they were attempting to influence and coerce me into paying them money. The court seemed unimpressed with their actions, and you could see the look on my ex's face as she realized things weren't going her way. By the end, the judge had ruled in my favor. Not only did my ex not receive any further alimony, but they also cut the amount I was giving her. The judge saw right through her performance and determined that she didn't deserve as much as she had been given. It was the best result I could have asked for. Following the verdict, my ex and brother stormed out of the courthouse without saying anything to me. I could see rage and frustration on their expressions, and it felt fantastic. For the first time in this entire disaster, I felt like I had won. I wasn't the one being walked all over anymore. But it did not end there. My father tried calling me again a few days following the court verdict. He left a voicemail saying something about how I had damaged the family and was ripping them apart. I didn't even hear the whole thing. I simply deleted it and banned his number again. I was not going to let them drag me back into their drama. I was finished, for real this time, and honestly, I feel liberated now. For the first time in years, I don't feel the weight of my family's expectations, my ex's falsehoods, or my brother's treachery. I am just me. I've cut them all out, and am focused on myself. It's not always simple, and it still aches to think about what happened. But I'm not going to let it dictate my life anymore. Since the court case, I've focused on my work, my friends, and simply living my life. I'm not going to lie and claim that everything is perfect right now. It isn't. I still get irritated at times, and wonder what could have been if things had turned out differently. However, those occasions are becoming increasingly rare. The truth is that I'm better off without them. My family, and especially my ex, were poisonous. It took me a long time to see it, but I finally did. I am never going back to that life. I've got a new start, and I'm not going to waste it. So that is the end of it. My family tried to screw me over, and my ex tried to take more than she deserved, but in the end, I came out ahead. I have no idea what the future contains, but for the first time in a long time, I'm excited to find out. And if they ever try to re-enter my life, well, let's just say I'm no longer afraid to fight back. Update 1. Okay. So this is when things took an unexpected turn. After the divorce and cutting off contact with my family, I felt I'd had enough of their crap. But you know what they say, right? When it rains, it pours. I should have known they would not simply leave me alone. I received a message from someone I haven't communicated with in years. My aunt. Now let me tell you a little bit about her. She's my father's sister, and we were never really close growing up. She seemed to avoid family turmoil, so I didn't think much of her. But she seems to be keeping up with everything because she heard about my divorce and contacted me. At first I assumed she was just checking in to see how I was doing. But alas, she had her own agenda, just like everyone else in my family. She began by expressing her concern for my parents and how the circumstance had pulled the family apart. Then she asked me if I would reconsider talking to them again. She stated that they were struggling without me, and that it wasn't too late to fix things. I was astonished, like, are you serious? After everything that has transpired, I am supposed to fix things? I told her straight out that I had no interest in fixing anything. I made it obvious that they were the ones who put me under the bus, not the other way around, and I was not going to pretend everything was all right simply because they were hurting right now. She tried to guilt trip me, saying things like, "Your dad isn't getting any younger, and family is all we've got at the end of the day." I'd heard it all before. It didn't work before, and it certainly wasn't working now. I told her the same thing I told my parents. I owe them nothing. I'm not going to sweep everything under the rug just because they've decided it's time to have me back in their lives. She didn't take it very well. She became defensive, stating that my parents were only trying to do what was best for everyone, and that I needed to let go of my resentment. I wasn't even upset at that point. Just tired of having the same conversation over and over. I told her that if she truly cared about the family, she should have intervened when everything was happening, rather than showing up now when it was convenient for her. The talk ended abruptly after that. She stated she was disappointed in me, which was sort of funny. Disappointed in me? Who in this family has tried to stand up for themselves? Okay. I understand. So that's where I am now. They're still trying to get me back in, making me feel like the bad guy for refusing to deal with their problems. But I am not falling for it. I've traveled too far to return now. I have my own life to live, and I am not going to spend it cleaning up their trash. Thanks for watching and diving into this wild family drama with me. If you love Reddit family drama, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one.